Welcome everyone to this council meeting. The first item on the agenda is apologies of absence. Jonathan?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We received no apologies this evening, but I know councillors Yateman, Rodsmith, Regisford and Ligo will be late.
Thank you. Any apologies? Councillor Mowers?
Yes, Ross Smith and Councillor Goddard are running late, but they are coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more apologies? None. Any declaration of interest? Yes.
The Oxford Living Wage motion has 4 unions mentioned in it. If you are a member of any of those 4 unions, you should probably be declaring an interest. I am a member of USDOR, which is my interest, and I am also work in high street retail, which is something else that's mentioned in the motion.
Thank you. Emma, to advise.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. There are a number of organisations mentioned in the preamble to the recommendations on that motion before Council. My advice would be, however, that the recommendation does not directly impact on any of those organisations, and whilst members may have affiliations with those mentioned in the preamble, the recommendation doesn't impact on those organisations, therefore you don't have an interest to declare. However, should you wish to just state the organisation, you can, but my advice is that there's no requirement for you to make a declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I declare an interest in the third Labour motion on the agenda, which is motion G. I will leave the room if it is to be discussed because it references my employer, and I would like to make it clear that I took no part in any discussions about the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Smorton?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Apologies if I've just missed an email on this one. I'd appreciate advice about the Littlemore Neighbourhood plan on account of how I am a Littlemore Parish Councillor and was also substantially involved in the creation of the plan.
Thank you. Councillor, I will call Emma to advise.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, Councillor Smith, and apologies, it's been rather a hectic day. I have advised Councillor Railton, Councillor Henwood, Councillor Stairs, and I will now advise yourself that as you were all at the Parish Council meeting that approved the neighbourhood plan for Littlemore, that you should not take part in the discussion on the basis of predetermination and vacate the chamber prior to that item being discussed.
Thank you. Councillor Railton?
Yes, that was my declaration of interest, so I will get somebody else to move that item.
Thank you. Any more declaration of interest? Councillor Henwood?
Yeah, just to clarify, I am the chair of the working group for the Littlemore local plan, hence I'll be recusing myself when that item comes on the agenda, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stairs as well?
Yes, I'm also on Littlemore Parish Council, but I think that's been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands. I'll go to the minutes. We have got 2 sets of minutes. I'll start with the minutes of 23rd March 2026. Can I have the proposer of those minutes? Oh, I'll propose. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Ashad. Any questions or comments on those minutes of 23rd of March? Councillor Henwood.
I understand that my standing order has been accepted and that will be amended in the minutes of the last full council. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the monitoring officer to clarify.
Yes, Lord Mayor, what we will be minuting in the minutes is that Councillor Henwood raised a point of order which the Lord Mayor ruled was not a point of order, so that will be added to the minutes.
Thank you. Any more comments on the 23rd March 2026 minutes? Nothing. We go to the annual council minutes. I'll propose those minutes. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Brown. Any comments on those minutes? None. Thank you very much. appointments to... All right. Can we have a vote to approve the minutes? All those in favor? Anonymous? So both minutes are approved. Thank you so much. Appointments to committees? None. Announcements? Yes. I'll start as a Lord Mayor. First of all, I just want to thank the members for voting for me. I've obviously enjoyed my first almost 2 months being Lord Mayor. I've had so many engagements, and one of the highlighting one is meeting His Majesty the King. Last Friday, opening the Swaziman Center for Humanities. That was moving for me to talk to him. We had 30 seconds conversation. I've done a lot of engagements apart from that, from experiencing the opening of the street markets, the Leeds Festival, and just to mention a few. That's from me. I'll go now to the Deputy Lord Mayor.
I wasn't expecting to make any announcements, but I have filled in for you on a couple of occasions, but it's very nice just being Deputy Lord Mayor, I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Sheriff.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've been taking my responsibility as Conservator of Port Meadow very seriously, and Meadow has very much been the focus of my attention to date as Sheriff. So on June the 5th, I held a meeting with officers from our Parks and Communications teams together with ODS to plan for keeping the Meadow safe and clean over the busy summer months. And on June the 19th, ODS supported the annual Sheriff's inspection of the Meadow, where my consort and I saw firsthand some of the challenges faced by our Countryside Ranger team, and I was left thoroughly impressed by their knowledge, dedication and care for the Meadow. I was also thoroughly impressed by the Aunt Sally skills of both Ed and Isaac from ODS at the plough following the inspection, and thanks to them and a few colleagues in the chamber with us this evening, the Sheriff's team came closer to beating the Freeman than at any other time in living memory, apparently. Most importantly, there were no injuries and no property was destroyed during the course of the evening's entertainment, which is always a bonus. Vital to Port Meadow's natural environment is the River Thames and the Wolvercote Mill Stream, which was granted designated bathing water status in 2022 with this council's full and active support. Since then, the water quality has been rated consistently poor, which is a matter of huge concern to many, many Oxford residents. As Sheriff of Oxford, I penned an open letter to the Chief Executive of Thames Water, which was published in the Oxford Mail and the Oxford Times, raising my concerns about the lack of improvement in water quality. Following this, I was offered a meeting with both Thames Water and the Environment Agency, which happened on the 27th of June. I was told at this meeting that despite 4 years of investigation by Thames Water and the Environment Agency, the reason for the consistently poor water quality is still a mystery. They do not believe that discharge from sewage treatment works alone are responsible for the high levels of bad bacteria found, but they do know that the source is most likely to be human faeces. The next step being proposed by the Environment Agency is a project coordinated by a small local charity to bring together stakeholders and volunteers to identify the source of the pollution. So I express my disbelief and disappointment at the lack of progress over the last 4 years. And while this council should support the new project in whichever way we can, I don't believe that a response led by a small local charity run on a shoestring budget and reliant on volunteers in canoes and citizen scientists is commensurate to the priority of this environmental disaster. So Thames Water and the Environment Agency really need to do better. They need to do more. And I plan to write to the relevant government ministers to demand that they are made to do so. And I will keep yourself and councillors informed of progress, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We have got announcement from the leader.
I'm afraid to say, Lord Mayor, I've actually got a number of announcements, so bear with me. There's been a lot happening. So first of all, on local government reorganisation, I trust that members are aware that we are expecting an announcement this week. So obviously a comprehensive communications plan has been agreed, and as soon as the announcement is made, it will be shared with staff, councillors and residents, as well as our wider community and stakeholders. So watch this space sometime this week. The next item on the agenda is devolution. So we will be coming to this again on this agenda, but I make no apology for raising this exceptionally important issue under my announcements as well. As Council will be only too sadly aware, the Thames Valley devolution deal was vetoed at the last minute by Councillor Tim Bearder, leader of Oxfordshire County Council. This shocking and undemocratic decision, made on behalf of the district and city councils in Oxfordshire, but with no prior warning or consultation with us, has left all the authorities in the Thames Valley reeling, as 18 months of work was undone at a stroke. However, this is far too important a prize for our residents to allow one person to undo the collaborative work to bring investment, powers and secure future funding for our area. So we have pledged to continue to work with the new Prime Minister to ensure that we can move ahead with devolution locally. There will be a chance on the back of the Cabinet report later on our agenda for all members to show their support for devolution. Moving on, I also wanted to reference the Oxford Union debate, which again, there are a number of questions on this later on the Council agenda. Some of which suggest that Council was not aware of the very clear statement I put out through the Council press office prior to the event taking place, in which I condemned the way in which the Oxford Union has consistently behaved, inviting deliberately provocative speakers and then not being prepared to pay the costs to the community for providing security, and also not accepting their responsibilities to wider community cohesion. A reminder that we are trying to get them to do so and will work with anyone who wishes to also get them to take financial responsibility and not put the burden on the taxpayer for funding their indulgences. The Cabinet Member for a Safer Oxford, Councillor Lubna Arshad, and I wrote to the Police and Crime Commissioner inviting him to join us in asking the Oxford Union to meet the cost to the public purse, and I also asked the County Council to join us, which they committed to so doing. Next, Campsfield. A number of weeks ago, I asked the Head of Planning to help me write a formal letter setting out the Council's objections to the reopening of Campsfield in line with this Council's and this Labour administration's, and indeed local Labour parties, very long-standing opposition to the use of Campsfield as a detention centre, and that letter has been sent. And then I also saw yesterday something which I wanted to draw the attention of Council to, which is that our former Labour councillor and Cabinet member, now MP for Penistone and Stockbridge, Marie Tidball, so late of this parish, has received the Stonewall Changemaker Award for policy change alongside her fellow Labour MP, Rachel Taylor, for their work on changing the law in relation to hate crime on the basis of someone's sexuality, gender identity or disability, putting those on an equal footing as race or religion. Their work is the biggest step forward in LGBTQ+ rights since the legalisation of gay marriage in 2010, and I'm sure the Council would want to formally congratulate Marie on this award. Finally, let's do that. And then finally, my announcement is about champions. So I would like to announce the following champions and the Cabinet members they'll be working with. So firstly, the Armed Forces and Veterans Champion, Councillor Mark Ligo. He'll continue in his champion role, but as basically he's the Cabinet member for it, he'll have to work with himself on that one. So I think he'll basically take it on as part of his Cabinet role. Cycling Champion, Councillor Louise Upton will continue her good work as Cycling Champion, working with Councillor Anna Elton. Heritage Champion, Councillor Mary Clarkson, will again continue her good work working with Councillor Anna Elton. Nighttime Economy and Events Champion, Councillor James Taylor, will work with me on that role. Older People's Champion, Councillor Trish Elphinstone, will work with Councillor Mark Ligo. And Small Business Champion, the Lord Mayor, if he is still willing, I am very happy to ask to continue to do his work as a small business champion. Again, that'll be kind of working with me. And then finally, Vision Zero champion is Councillor Chris Smoten, who will be working with Councillor Anna Elton. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. The Chief Executive, and announcements?
One for me.
Chief Finance Officer, Monitoring Officer. Thank you. I now call upon the City Rector for his address.
Thank you so much, Lord Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you. As we may know, 2,126 years ago today, Julius Caesar was born, and he was a magnificent general, an amazing writer, and was actually very bad at reading a room in modern jargon, and that's why he came to an untimely end. And as I was preparing for this evening, I thought, I am so privileged and blessed to be with so many wonderful councillors. You are actually very good at reading rooms, reading the room. So thank you for that. Also, if anybody wants something to do during the long summer months, we note that this month is named after Caesar. The next month is named after his great nephew. If we were pondering changing the months of the year, I'm not saying this should be an agenda item, then where would we go with that? Thank you so much, and I hope the evening goes well for us all.
Thank you very much. We are now on item number 7, urgent business. We have received Councillor Henwood.
Well, the IOA has put forward an urgent motion, Lord Mayor, on the prolonged heat wave that we are experiencing and the number of deaths that we're experiencing across the country as well. I would like this motion to be floored.
Sorry, Councillor Henwood, just a minute. Before I call upon Councillor Henwood, I call upon the monitoring officer to just explain how the process works.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So, under the Constitution, there is provision for members to raise emergency items. However, where the monitoring officer is doesn't give advice to the Lord Mayor, which is either way, then the Lord Mayor needs to put that to the council meeting, and it will require 10 members in support of it to be determined. In terms of my position, there is nothing that is inherently wrong with it, or nothing that would lend me to sort of give an opinion either way. So my advice, Lord Mayor, is that you put it to the meeting, and if there are 10 in support, the item can be debated, and if there are not, then move on to the next item.
Unfortunately, we missed items.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to that when we do items.
Thank you. Sorry, we missed item 6. Audio Councillor Henwood will come back to that. I believe we have got a public speaker for item number 6, Martin Reid. So if we can invite the public speaker, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. Today, councillors had the opportunity to delete an unsound policy from the draft local plan and smooth the wheels to the plan's adoption by heading off a key cause for argument to public examination. Requesting the removal of this unsound policy would render the whole plan sound, a statutory obligation before its submission to the inspector. Land at Meadow Lane in Iffley is 2.5 acres of biodiverse meadow habitat, which is an integral part of the rural Iffley conservation area. It has the worst sustainability score of any proposed allocation site in the plan, and in recognition of the site's problems, no minimum housing number. The evidence for the unsoundness of land at Meadow Lane is in your agenda packs. You should take into account the results of the Reg 18 and Reg 19 consultations, which were not before you when you met in January. The absence of that essential public consultation material and its relevance to your decision making was the reason Friends of the Fields Iffley took legal advice and was granted a judicial review and an injunction to prevent the submission of the local plan. The Reg 18 consultation summary extends over 8 pages with many material objections, including from the Environment Agency, Oxford Preservation Trust, Beebelt Wildlife Trust and Cyclox. Objections include substantial harm to the rural Iffley conservation area and biodiversity interest qualifying as an Oxford City wildlife site, and poor access and the harms to the adjacent quiet route for active travel. The Reg 19 consultation summary notes the absence of support for the allocation. Rather, a total of 45 responses found this policy to be unsound, concluding that the policy is not positively prepared, justified or effective, and not compliant with national policies, and not compliant with many of the Council's own policies. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip forward to my myths, but you can read in your agenda packs the officer's comments about a horse. So, dispelling myths. The site is suitable for housing because it was allocated to LP 36. No, the Council's surveys since allocation show that its high sensitivity cannot deliver any minimum housing number. Reallocation is at odds with the Council's own processes to filter out unsustainable sites. Myth 2. There is considered to be a potential scheme that responds appropriately to this setting. No, there is no evidence that a potential scheme can respond appropriately, and planning applications run into a brick wall for this reason. Even a small amount of housing around the edge of the site would lead to significant harm to the conservation area and biodiversity. For example, by blocking the rural conservation area views accessible from the ancient lanes and removing ancient hedgerows and listed walls. Myth 3, removing the site is not legal because there's a clear requirement that the local plan identify all viable housing sites. There is no requirement on you to identify all viable housing sites either in law or policy. The requirement is to identify sound sites sufficient to meet the spatial strategy of the plan. Myth 4, removing it would treat one specific site as an exception to the process, and this would undermine the plan. On the contrary, removal of SPS 8 would be consistent with processes that led to many other proposed sites being rejected due to heritage, etc. In fact, it is very common, if not routine, for councils to propose modifications to the inspector at this stage of the plan-making process. The suitability argument is one that needs to be looked at by the local plan inspector at examination. That's myth 5. The decision on soundness cannot be delegated to the inspector or a planning committee. Elected members have a different role to the planning inspector by making decisions that reflect local circumstances. So I do hope that there will not be any additions to the mythology in this meeting today. Conclusion. For all these reasons, I ask that members vote for the only sound course of action, which is to remove SPS 8 from the local plan and thereby send a local plan to examination that is sound and ready for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I believe Councillor Wrighton is to respond.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much, Martin, for coming to speak to us today. I will attempt to sort of run through point by point the substance of your address. So, generally about the process. So, councillors do not, as stated in the address, have the opportunity to delete an unsound policy from the plan. The publication version is the version that we must submit. Policy SPS 8 is not considered unsound, but the inspector will have full access to the Reg 19 representations and will make decisions about whether any changes are needed to the plan to make it sound, and that is very much their role. The weight of comments received does not render a policy unsound, and comments received out of Reg 18 do not relate to soundness, but are intended to shape the plan. So moving on to the sort of housing quantum, the fact that there is now, in the emerging local plan, there is no housing number attached to this policy. So no minimum is included in the policy to enable full flexibility in designing a scheme, given the fully acknowledged sensitivities of the site. Policy allocations do not have to include minimum housing numbers, but most of them do to help ensure delivery of our assumed capacity. The capacity assessment, however, does make an assumption of 29 units, which is the minimum in the Oxford Local Plan 2036. In response to myth one, it has never been suggested that the site is unsuitable for housing just because it was allocated in LP 36. All sites have been reconsidered and reassessed afresh as part of creating this emerging local plan. So moving on to heritage, so this is myth two. It is suggested there is no evidence a scheme can respond appropriately to the heritage setting because any development would lead to significant harm, for example, by blocking views from the ancient lanes and removing hedgerows and listed walls. It is suggested the planning application has stalled for this reason. The current application is still under consideration. It has neither been withdrawn nor determined. In any event, any application presents just one proposal for development that must be considered on its own merits, and how it's determined will be relevant to that proposal, not the development potential of the site. It is reasonable to assume that sensitive design can retain key characteristics and that a scheme could bring benefits that outweigh any harms, the approach of the MPPF. Conservation area designations do not automatically prevent any new development, even on green spaces that are part of the setting. The allocation policy is written to note important characteristics and mitigations. This is informed by the initial testing through the capacity assessment process undertaken for all site allocations, which indicated ways of responding appropriately to the site's sensitivities. Myth three covers the housing pressure. This is not a matter of law. It is a matter of soundness that when a plan puts forward a housing requirement based on capacity and which is lower than the identified need, then it must demonstrate every effort has been made to identify potential housing sites. It does not mean that unsuitable sites must be put forward for housing, but it does mean that identified suitable housing sites should be allocated for housing. There is no beauty contest for housing sites in Oxford, and the sustainability appraisal is not used to find which sites are best rated and should be taken forward. Even the lowest rated site will be taken forward if it seems mitigation is likely to be possible for any identified issues. So the heritage constraints, there are occasionally, but very rarely, heritage constraints that would prevent a site being taken forward for a housing allocation, and none in this round of plan making that are rejected solely for this reason. On the biodiversity point, designated sites are protected and therefore very rarely put forward to development and not investigated. This site is not designated, although there is clearly biodiversity value. An ecological survey was carried out when the site was first allocated in Local Plan 2036. This was a phase 1 habitat survey. The policy was clear that further, more detailed ecological surveys would be required at application stage. These have been carried out to inform the current planning application and have found species interest, but potential mitigation has not been ruled out. And that is all I have to say at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wrighton. Councillor Henwood, thanks for your patience as well. Now we are back to item number 7, urgent business. So to hear Councillors Henwood emergency motion requires 10 members to support taking the item. Could members who support taking the business please raise their hands? So the item falls. I propose the adjustment to the items in the agenda. I want to take item 9, 10, 12, 16, 14, and 15 first before I can take item 8 and 11. So I'm going to go straight to agenda item number 9, HRA property service policies. I believe Councillor Smith is to introduce the report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, we've got 13 HRA policies to approve this evening. The Aids and Adaptations Policy, the Complaints Policy, the Compliance Policy, the Decamp Policy, the Disposals Policy, the Gas Safety Policy, the Health and Safety Policy, the Lifting Equipment and Lifting Operations Policy, the Mutual Exchange Policy, the No Access Policy, the Permit to Work Policy, the Radon Policy and the Voids Policy. Council tenants, leaseholders and shared owners have the right to know that they are safe in their home, to know how their landlord is performing, to have their complaints dealt with promptly when things do go wrong, to be treated with respect, to have their voice heard by their landlord, and to have a good quality home and neighbourhood to live in. And we are committed to delivering on these principles, and this latest group of HRA policies will help us to do so. They're important for making sure we are meeting the stringent new regulatory requirements expected of all social landlords, and they will help us ensure the effective operation of our day-to-day housing services, giving us a sound operating framework, the ability to monitor our performance, maintain high standards, and provide transparency for our residents about what they should expect from us. And I think it's important, and I think maybe the independent councillors, in light of the vote we've just had, maybe should pay heed to this, that these policies are not made on the hoof. These policies draw on the lived experience of our residents. There's been a series of meetings with the Residents Policy Review Group. There's been surveys done with residents, and they have resulted in amendments and ultimately approval of these policies. And it's really important that we take this approach in future, as well as making sure that our policies are developed with the council officers that we will rely on to actually deliver them, and that we've actually got sufficient budget and resource there to back those policies up and deliver them. So we're not setting ourselves up to fail our tenants. So yes, these policies have already been approved by Cabinet, another part of the strong governance process that we should really follow when it comes to our serious responsibilities as a landlord. And now they're being presented here this evening, so I hope we can give them final sign-off. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Do you have the seconder?
Formally second.
Any questions from members? Councillor Henwood, did you want to raise a question?
No questions for Councillor Smith. Excellent presentation.
Right. Yes, now we go to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous, so the report is passed. Thank you. We go to the Local Authority Housing Fund, round 4. I believe, Councillor Smith, you are introducing the report.
Shall I start off? Yeah, so the report is in both my name and Councillor Rowley's, because it's covering both housing for the resettlement of refugees and also temporary accommodation. So I'm going to talk about the aspect of the grant, the £898,500, which we are going to receive from government, but then pass on to a registered provider to deliver the resettlement element of this, which will provide 4 homes for Afghan households in need of resettlement under the UK's Afghan resettlement programme. So just to underscore the fact that this part of the scheme is cost neutral to the council, that we're accepting the grant but then passing it on to a registered provider. And the proposal is to work with a local registered provider rather than deliver this directly through the HRA, because this will deliver extra social housing for the city without the HRA having to take on further borrowing when it's already stretched, and that means that the HRA resource can instead be used on other priorities. And what's most important, I think, is that is the City Council will retain nomination rights for these properties because we're working with one of our local registered providers. So if the original tenants move on within 3 years, then the government expectation is that property will be used for another family on the Afghan resettlement programme. But after 3 years, when that tenancy ends, then it will just, that property will be there to serve the wider housing needs of the city. So yeah, I commend this report to Council this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't have that much to add. The 4 temporary accommodation units will be commissioned along similar lines to those Councillor Smith has just outlined. The government grant covers half the cost, so we thought that it would make the most sense to use this to commission some of the temporary accommodation that we agreed to back in March, that £32 million investment. It won't actually deliver extra properties, but it does reduce the HRA borrowing requirement, therefore giving us more room for manoeuvre within the HRA budget in the future. And like the refugee resettlement properties, we will have nomination rights. In fact, those properties will be retained in the HRA. So if, as is our intention, gradually fewer properties are needed as temporary accommodation, then they will be able to be permanent social homes. With that, therefore, I hope that the report will be approved.
Do you have the seconder? Councillor Brown? Any questions from members? See Councillor Smorton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will, of course, be supporting the proposal. I just wanted to highlight that across 4 rounds of the programme, the Council has been able to acquire 22 units of housing. And I think that stands in contrast to the 150 that were just spoken of. And I think that rather speaks to the gulf between the scale of support that is coming from central government to deal with what is very much a national temporary accommodation crisis, and the amount that it is asking local authorities to bear that burden themselves. So the question is, will the Cabinet member, considering new management is expected upstairs this week, will the Cabinet member re-emphasise to government that there is a desperate need for much more support from central government to deal with the temporary accommodation crisis?
Councillor Smoton may be assured that we frequently do make that point to central government. However, as the report makes clear, at the time that we approved investment in extra investment in temporary accommodation in March, we weren't expecting this funding to come and reduce our borrowing requirement. So everything that, as I believe the people at Tesco say, every little helps. But we will, of course, always ask for more.
I've seen Councillor Malik's hand.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to make brief comments, actually. I raised this previously, when we were housing these people, and I welcome this because although it's a central government, but you will remember Afghan people flee before the Ukrainian war started, and I raised that before, but the central government obviously prioritized the Ukrainian and above the Afghan, as is the Afghan who put their life in a danger to work for us, the British forces and the other coalition in Afghanistan, and they flee from the fear of the Taliban. So although it's very much delayed, but I welcome this is happening now.
Any comment? Thank you. Any more questions? None. I'll put this report to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous, so that is agreed. Agenda item number 12, urgent key decisions since January 2026. Call upon Councillor Brown to introduce the report.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I move the report on urgent key decisions. You may recollect that we introduced a system a few years back of recording urgent decisions in a formal manner, and there was a bit of a review by Scrutiny a while back with my full support to make sure that urgent key decisions were indeed urgent and key. And were needed to be taken in this way. I think these are both such decisions, always welcome to be receiving money from government, which is what the first decision is about. And the second one was an urgent extension to a decision to around our investments. So I hope Council can support this, although actually I think it's just for noting.
Any questions from the members? Councillor Miles?
So this is more of a note rather than question, and I think we just see a continued pattern of these urgent key decisions, and whilst each decision is taken on its own merits, because there has been this pattern of urgent key decisions, it suggests that some processes aren't potentially fit for purpose, and I just want to note that when the transition process happens for any new authority with LGR, that this is noted so that effective and sufficient democratic oversight it continues to be provided, whilst also ensuring the agility of the council to respond and act quickly to deliver for residents. So this is something that maybe from a process perspective needs to be looked at going further, because otherwise we just continue with this pattern. But thank you for bringing this to council. I think it was when I was Scrutiny Chair we raised this as an issue, and I'm pleased to see that this reporting has continued, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles.
May I
Councillor
respond,
Brown?
Lord? Yeah, I'd like to respond, Lord Mayor. I mean, I completely agree with the sort of premise of what you're saying, Catherine, which is that I think it's really important that, you know, as I said in my introductory remarks, that urgent key decisions are indeed urgent and they are key. I do think both of these would fall into that category, and I think it is never going to be possible for any council to be able to take all decision-making through what is quite often quite a lengthy process. There will always be things that sort of come up, and these are both such issues. So, but they also represent considerable large sums of money, which it's important to get right. So it's important that there is a process around it. I thank her as Chair of Scrutiny for having supported the process. I think she's right that we need to make sure that in the transition arrangements we continue to look at all of these and keep a really close eye on it, but I am certainly satisfied that these fall within that category.
Any more questions or comments? None. We are asked to note the report. So that's noted. Thank you. Agenda item number 16, Scrutiny Committee Annual Report. I believe Councillor Powell is introducing the report.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So it's been an interesting year. Obviously, as we head into the process of LGR, it was a very, very busy year for the Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to start by extending my very sincere thanks to officers, particularly to Celeste and Jonathan, who've done so much to support the committee over the past year. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the many cabinet members who've come along, sometimes to quite long meetings, at least twice where the keepers have been trying to actively move us out of the building, to answer questions to the committee. During the reporting period, we had a total of 84 recommendations which we made, and 51 of these were accepted, with a further 17 accepted in part. So I think that reflects a really, really good working relationship with Cabinet as that sort of critical friend, which I would say is particularly important in a situation of minority administration. The report is there for everyone to see on the papers, so I won't speak for much longer, but if there are any questions, obviously happy to take them.
Is there any questions from members? None. We are asked to note the report. Again, item number 17, back to you, the committee update report. Councillor Powell.
Thank you very much. So, obviously, having just heard the annual report, I now move to the update report, which is a reflection on the period from the 19th of March until the 1st of July. Obviously, for much of this period, we were having elections. So Scrutiny met for the first time this municipal year in June. We had 2 meetings in June. During that time, we established the working groups, set out our strategic priorities, and also took our first substantive item. During the entire report period, we made 22 recommendations to Cabinet across various reports, 15 of which were agreed. And again, I welcome questions, should anyone have them.
Any questions? I can see none. We are again asked to note the report. Noted. Questions on cabinet minutes. So in front of us, we have got 3 sets of cabinet minutes. The first, 15th of April, 17th of June, and 18th of July. So I'll start first inviting members if they have got any questions on the minutes of 15th of April 2026. Councillor Smorton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. One question for Councillor Chapman relating to the fleet purchasing. Is will the council's fleet purchasing going forwards be buying zero emission?
I didn't quite catch the question. It was a bit muffled. Sorry, apologies.
Will the council's fleet purchase going forwards be going zero emission?
It will be doing its very best to do so. It will depend on the availability in the market and the models that are available to it.
Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Item 187, I wanted to query, can the Cabinet member confirm that the proposed new housing and asset management system is to replace the infamous Aeron QL? And a question for the leader, can the leader assure the council that all the lessons from the QL fiasco a few years ago have been learnt and will be applied to the new procurement?
Well, I'm happy to answer the IT aspects of the question. I think fiasco is a bit of a strong word, given that the QL system has been working successfully now for a number of years and is one of the best systems around. So there was, as you remember, Councillor, very extensive reports about the whole business of QL and lessons were learned in relation particularly to procurement issues, in relation to project management, long-term investment, in relation to not having a system where people are allowed to add all sorts of bells and whistles to the system and therefore making it very, very hard to introduce, etc., etc. And I think we were on the same committee at the time when we discussed that. So I can absolutely assure you that those lessons have been learned, yes.
Any more questions on the minutes on the 15th of April? Councillor Fairweather.
Sorry, I didn't get a reply to my first question, which was, is this new system to replace the Aeron QL system?
It will be, but we'll obviously have to go through a proper procurement process to know precisely what the system will be.
All right, we have got the monitoring officer to clarify something.
Apologies, Councillor Chapman, but the property system that's been procured is for property services. It's not intended to replace QL. QL will, however, need to be looked at in terms of being re-procured, but they're for 2 different functions of the council.
Thank you. On that note, we are going to the minutes for the 17th June 2026. Any comments or questions? I see none. We move on to the minutes of the 18th July 2026. Any comments or questions? No comments. I see no hands. Thank you very much. We are going to...
Excuse me, Lord Mayor, but there is a recommendation from Cabinet to Council, so we have to take a vote on that, which is to... on the Thames Valley Strategic Authority proposal, the update and implications for Oxford City, we made...
Sorry, the leader, I think the monitoring officer wants to clarify something.
Yep.
Yes, Councillor Brown, there was a recommendation at Cabinet to bring something to Council. Unfortunately, we had published the agenda by that point and it's not possible to meet the 7-day publication requirement. We're speaking with Mishtola and the report will be brought forward to Council on that topic. I think he's preparing it for October if that's the next Council meeting.
I mean, that seems a bit extraordinary. October, we hope we might be well into negotiations on this. I mean, I would invite council to show their support before then if they're willing to.
Sorry, there's a deliberation.
Again, apologies, Councillor Brown, because the recommendation to that report was added too late for officers to add it to the agenda for council. We didn't have the 7 days for council in order to get it as an item on this council agenda. So therefore, it will have to be brought forward at another stage because we can't, other than by the emergency procedure, we can't add something to the council agenda once it's published that wasn't already envisaged as an item of decision making.
Thank you very much.
That's very disappointing, and I would still urge other groups around the council to show their support for the for continued discussions on a foundation strategic authority. I'm sorry that other groups are not going to have that opportunity to show their support at this council meeting.
On that note, we move on to the agenda item number 14, questions on notice. So, all right, Councillor Henwood, do you have any supplementary question?
I do, Lord Mayor, thank you.
SB1.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your response, Leader. Could you just confirm, again, if you wouldn't mind, that you approached all members of the council in order of the length of service that councillors have made to the council who have not yet been served as Lord Mayor? Would you just confirm that fact for me, please? Thank you.
Councillor Henwood, I'm sure you are aware that I didn't approach one member because one member, as we have discussed many times in this chamber, would not command the support of a majority of council for being Lord Mayor, and therefore, having done so on a number of previous occasions and explained that to him, I did not therefore go to that particular individual again, because it seems frankly unfair to keep rubbing it in that we are not prepared as a council to support that person for reasons that are in the public domain. I'm surprised you keep raising this.
Councillor Henwood, do you have a supplementary question on SB2?
I do, Lord Mayor, thank you. Leader, in your emails to me dated the 10th of March and the 20th of May, you stated there was a large majority of councillors of all three major groups who would not support Councillor Sergeant Malik. If there were no discussions between political groups, how did you establish the views of councillors across the three major groups?
It has been clear from previous discussions with leaders of the different groups that that is the position of those groups. And none of those groups have changed their position. It's not a discussion about who will be Lord Mayor between political groups. It was specifically a discussion about whether one individual would be supported as Lord Mayor, and that's it.
Councillor Henwood, do you have a supplementary question on number 3?
I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you. Leader, your response states that the criteria were the same as every previous year. However, in your emails to me, you also refer to support from majority of councillors and to the standards in public life. Were those considerations part of the established criteria? And if so, where were they published? What is Councillor Malik guilty of?
I don't think I want to answer that question, but I suggest that anyone who wishes to can read previous press articles. But I think this is really unfair on an individual member of the council. I really don't know why Councillor Henwood consistently is raising this issue, and you know, I find it extremely unpleasant, to be quite honest. It is important that our first citizen, our Lord Mayor, is above reproach, and that is something which I would hope that every single member of this council would feel is a very important thing. And for all of the reasons that we have discussed on many, many occasions previously, that is the position that the vast majority of people in this chamber have taken. That hasn't changed, and therefore there will not be an opportunity excuse me, for that person to be Lord Mayor for all of the reasons that are in the public domain.
Councillor Smorton, do you have any supplementary question on SB4?
Yes, Lord Mayor. Thank you for the answer. Being familiar with the submission from the Friends of the Museum that's referenced in later answers, also on the topic of the museum, I note that the answer says that there's no good way to compare footfall between the 2 years, but there are also claims that there is a substantial drop-off. Is the implication that you dispute the figures that have been provided and dispute their accuracy?
Yes.
Councillor Yetman, do you have any supplementary question on number 5?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Davis, do you have any supplementary question?
Yes, Lord Mayor. If students are removed from the electoral register again this year, will the council commit to contacting them directly by post to inform them of such in order to make it explicitly clear to them they have been removed from the register? Thank you.
I believe that is the intention, but I think it's something that we're reviewing at the moment, not just this authority, but also trying to link up with other university cities, because I think what was uncovered during the course of this election, and I'm also aware of students who were raising this issue directly with us, is that I think there are some concerns about the way in which students were removed. Equally, there are some concerns about just leaving students all on the register because it would become unmanageable quite quickly. So I think clearly more needs to be done, and this is something that we will continue to raise with government as well, because I think they can be helpful to us here in terms of giving clearer guidance or potential legislation. So we will continue to raise it, but I'm sure we will wish to discuss it as well with councillors who have a large number of students in their ward, like yourself.
Can I ask the members, when you're speaking, to speak direct in the microphone, because obviously it's quite hard to hear when you are far away. Councillor Davis, any supplementary question on number 7?
No, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Madman, any supplementary question on number 8? Councillor Mandy, any supplementary question on 9?
Thank you. For Susan Brown. Thank you. Yeah. So we've seen here about a 25% drop, 5k less in the first 2 quarters of this year versus last year. So is the previous estimate that time and money spent in the shop would increase, therefore shown to not reflect the realities following the introduction of charging at the museum? Thank you.
I think we're in very early days of charging at the moment. We'll have a clearer picture after we've had the summer figures, because obviously that's when the museum gets the most visitors, in particular visitors who might be willing to pay for coming to visit the museum. We will be doing a review in the autumn.
Number 10, any supplementary question, Councillor Mandy?
Yes. Thank you for listing those grants, and obviously at least one of them is quite sizable. So which, if any, of those grants required that the museum was charging an entry fee?
I think the original grant from the Arts Council required a business plan which added up, which included, from our perspective, a plan which put forward charging for the museum. So I don't think it's any of these ones, but I think it is the original Arts Council grant, which also included providing the equipment and so on for charging.
Any supplementary question on 11?
So we've got an over 80% drop in donations comparing those first 2 quarters. Does this reflect the estimates prior to introducing charging when it comes to donations?
I think, as I said earlier, in response to your earlier question, we'll be reviewing all of this when we've actually got several months' figures, including the summer figures, which is when we would expect there to be higher numbers of people attending and potentially higher numbers of donations and so on. We'll be looking at all of these things in the round. And, you know, I'm not in a position to sort of say everything's going perfectly, because I'm sure it isn't. But equally, we have to make sure that there is a business plan that adds up for the Museum of Oxford, because I want it to succeed, as I'm sure everyone in this council does. And I would just like to remind everybody, as I put in my response, that no group in this council proposed ending charging for the museum in their budget proposals, because we do need a business plan that adds up for the museum. So we need to make sure that we are providing the access that we want for people in Oxford and people who we want to be coming to visit our museum, but that we are also making sure we're taking advantage, where we can, of people's willingness to pay in order to help fund our museum for the future, because it's really important to us and to our city, and we really want to make sure it works.
Councillor Powell, any supplementary question on number 12?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. And just to clarify before I go into 12, I do not have one on 13 and 14, but I do on 15. So on 12, I thank the leader for her response, and I acknowledge the actions she took in advance of the event. Would she take this opportunity to confirm that she supports not just payment of the security costs, but also compensation to businesses, including pubs, many of whom in the city centre were closed on the date of England's first World Cup match and will have lost a significant opportunity for profit because of the selfish behaviour of Oxford Union?
Well, I mean, as I'd said in response to your other question, I mean, I think it is up to those businesses to decide whether they wish to put in a claim to the Oxford Union. But I mean, as I think it's something that we should be doing, I've got, you know, I'm perfectly supportive of them doing the same.
As I heard, you don't have supplementary questions for 13 and 14, but you have for 15. Okay, yeah. Go on.
Thank you very much. So I thank the leader for her response here, and I share her view that it's a real shame that the leader of Oxfordshire County Council acted in this way. She mentions campaigning activities in her response. Could she outline some of such activities? And if she wishes to use this as an opportunity to refer to the item in the Cabinet minutes, then that would be fine.
Thank you for that opportunity, Alex. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we will continue to meet as leaders across the Thames Valley, and I think it's important that we do. Obviously, there are opportunities. We'll have a new Prime Minister very soon, and it looks very likely that it's going to be one who is particularly committed to the idea of devolution and indeed to directly elected mayors. There is no difference of opinion on the subject of directly elected mayors, by the way, between any of the leaders across the Thames Valley. We are all supportive of the idea of having a directly elected mayoral authority. That wasn't on the table as an initial offer to us, that was made very clear, but it was also made very clear that we would get a mayor sooner if we applied to become a foundation strategic authority. So I think it's really important that we listen when government is telling us something, and you know, we have definitely missed an opportunity here, unfortunately. However, we potentially have an opportunity under a sort of, you know, slightly changed government to come back together and I hope work together to make sure that we take advantage of this opportunity, because for our residents, I think it's absolutely vital. It's very clear that future governments will be funding local government and local areas primarily through those strategic authority areas. And if you don't have a strategic authority, it's going to be a massive disadvantage. And in our area, I think we have huge opportunities to bring in additional funding, not just from government, but additional investment to our area, particularly into our infrastructure. So it just is a massively missed opportunity. But I do not allow any opportunity to go by without lobbying ministers, civil servants, and I know the Chief Executive does as well. So thank you.
Any supplementary question on number 16?
It's a complex one, so I'll pick up by email, and same goes for 17 as well.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, any supplementary question on 18?
Yeah. No, not for 18, but I have for 19. Okay.
Please go ahead.
For 19, yeah. Your response was very brief. In light of the climate emergency and the current heat wave, you've provided a link to a blank page apart from a link to the weather forecast. So I'm assuming there is no plan.
I don't know which page you were looking at, but the page I was looking at lists all of the places in Oxford where you can get cool shelter. So that was certainly the link I was looking at. So it may be that maybe I have supplied the wrong link, in which case, my apologies.
Councillor Powell, and supplementary on 20?
No supplementary, thank you.
Thank you. We go to Councillor Turner. Councillor Miles, any supplementary question for number 1?
Thank you. We look forward to seeing the online list of properties that the council owns. Just though to clarify, how many commercial properties are actually owned by the City Council? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a moment to find that. I was still exploring the web links and where to get called. I don't know off the top of my head. The council won't be surprised to hear, but we own quite a lot of commercial property and are very happy to, city centre and beyond, very happy to be putting that information in the public domain. The council might be interested to know one thing which we won't be doing is doing occupation status because of the risk of squatting or others, that are up to no good. Vandalism, that sort of thing. But the list of properties will be made available.
Going to Councillor Rayton. We are now on question number 1. Any supplementary question? No? Oh, yes. Sorry, apologies. Councillor Powell, any supplementary question?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. I thank the Cabinet Member for his response, and I'm glad to hear that the output is expected by the end of July. That's really, really promising. Obviously, this is a bit of a general question, but something I note as I walk around the city is the number of disabled facilities that are currently out of order. And can I encourage him and the Cabinet Member for Citizens Focused Services to really prioritise accessible facilities when they're engaging in this work at sort of the first line?
Sure thing, and I think that's helpful. And if the councillor is happy to drop myself and Nigel Chapman a line, then we'll be really glad to surface that with officers. Maybe it'd be helpful just to say I had wanted for a number of these sort of ambitions that we talked about amongst political groups to come forward in a report. In the outturn report as a sort of financial update. For some sort of council technical constitutional reasons, that's not going forward till August now, but I'm hoping that we can then bring that. And I would have liked to have been able then to have any recommendations to this council meeting. I think we'll be able to proceed with everything we've talked about, including the toilet refurbishment, without full council decisions. but there will be some other things there as well. So we're looking forward to bringing that report. With the outturn report, we can update people on all of those ambitions that they want to see. Because I know there's other topics, you haven't asked about it here, but notice boards, for example, amongst other matters. So, watch this space.
Thank you. We now go to Councillor Rockton. Councillor Henwood, do you have any supplementary question on number 1?
I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you. And thank you very much to portfolio holder for the detailed response. Given that the Section 106 funding only supports the enhanced 3A service until August 2027, can the Cabinet member confirm what plans are in place to ensure that the increased frequency, evening and on Sunday services continue after that date, so that residents of the Armstrong Road development do not lose their transport improvements that a developer contributions paid for? Thank you.
I do not know the answer to that question. I think we would definitely have to ask the County Council. It's very much not really a question for me. But yeah, I think I would also just say, I mean, it's also an improvement that, quite a lot of other residents in Littlemore, including myself, have enjoyed, not just the residents of Armstrong Road. But yes, I do not know the answer. I guess we can ask the County Cabinet member responsible what the plan is. There may not be a plan, given that neither council is going to exist after 2027 and will have to be picked up by the new authority. But I guess we can do our best to find out the answer to that question.
Councillor Henwood, do you have supplementary question number 2?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you for outlining the planning assessment, but my question was about the principle rather than the specific allocation. Does the portfolio holder agree that parking provision at hospitals should be determined by the operational needs of patients, visitors, carers and NH staff, even where there are results in a higher level of parking than would normally be expected under the Council's transport policies?
I think this very much does have to be taken on a case-by-case basis, really. I mean, certainly in the planning committee for the Warnford Hospital, although I think my memory serves me, I did actually propose accepting this application. I did very much say that I was not happy about the level of parking that was involved in the application. Certainly, in the JR at the moment, the JR is literally building a new trauma centre on one of their car parks, and I think there's not many people here who would be like, we would prefer to keep 100 car parking spaces over a new state-of-the-art trauma centre. So I think it's very much a case of, you sort of do have to take this stuff in the round, and yeah, I think you do have to take this stuff in the round.
Councillor Taxon Hood, do you have any supplementary question on number 3?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. My question is that I wish to first of all thank Councillor Railton for her detailed response to my question, but it doesn't answer my question. My question is, after 8 years, when is the council going to issue a lease to the Summertown Football Club in respect of the 5 Mile Drive recreation ground? Would it be possible, please, to have a date? Thank you.
So it's very similar to the answer to AR4 in that, given this is a negotiation with a third party, I very much cannot give a date.
Can you, then give...
Sorry, you're not allowed to, you're just allowed one question.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Goddard, do you have any supplementary question on number 4?
Yes, Lord Mayor, thank you. It's a very similar supplementary question, so it'll probably get a very similar supplementary answer. But, okay, in this particular instance, it's only been 7 years, not 8 years. But it is still a very long time. I don't fully understand the point about not providing a binding date because it's a negotiation with a third party. It would be lovely just to have a date. So maybe we should try and arrange one in the near future.
Yes, I literally can't give you a date. As I have said over multiple emails, though, I am very much willing to go and meet with the Wolverhampton Cricket Club, and I do very much, sort of re-extend that offer, and we can get it sorted out. We do want to get this sorted out, and both clubs You know, we do want them to succeed, but no, I literally can't give you a date.
Councillor Fairweather, do you have a supplementary question number 5?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the response. I'm very disappointed by the last part, which you say we will therefore not be replacing these nets with rope nor chain nets. I have discussed this with several players, and their attitude is very much, well, is it now City Council policy to not maintain sports equipment in parks? My question, supplementary question, is this seems to me that rope is not very good because it gets ripped far too easily. However, artificial fibre rope wouldn't be subject to the same damage due to ripping. The other point is that £500 a set for chain, I'm told by players that chain nets last almost forever. So could I again ask the Cabinet member to consider replacing these nets across the city, because I've been told that this is widespread across the city, consider replacing the nets with chains. Thank you.
Okay, so, I mean, firstly, I think the assertion that we do not look after sports equipment in this city is pretty unfair and, you know, objectively not true. The first question, I mean, I think, you know, what the rope is made out of is inconsequential. I don't think we were talking about hemp rope anyway. I think it was always going to be a sort of, you know, whatever, synthetic nylon or something. But, you know, ROSPA does not recommend using them. I mean, so I think that more or less closes that one out. And I mean, you know, when it comes to chain nets, I mean, we've all got, well, most of us have ward member budget, and I think, you know, this is the sort of thing that could be used for. I mean, you know, I've certainly used my ward member budget to improve various things in Hinksey Park, so I would encourage you to do the same.
Councillor Yetman, do you have any supplementary question for number 6?
Nothing for number 6, Lord Mayor, but I have one for number 7.
Please go ahead for number 7.
Thank you for the response. If individual schemes don't assess the cumulative impacts, who is responsible for assessing the cumulative impact on residents as multiple developments were approved over the lifetime of the local plan?
Okay, so I mean, I'm very much not an expert on equality impact assessments, so so I'll not directly comment on that. But I mean, you know, the sort of cumulative impact, I mean, that's sort of kind of the point of having a local plan, in that, you know, all of this stuff is in there, and you can take this stuff in the round. You know, without a local plan, which we currently do not have an in-date local plan, you sort of, you do lose the control over the sort of cumulative impacts of these multiple sites, because sites can just come forward, you know, there's a tilted balance in favour of it, and, you know, we do, it is there. So I think I mean, yes, I think it's very much, that is the point of, well, one of the points of the local plan is that this is taking that into account, you know, including all of the other services, you know, the services that you talk about. I mean, it's also not totally one-sided, right? You know, there are services that will be improved by having improved density, by doing infill sites. It's not always to the detriment, right, to build housing.
Thank you. Councillor Ballard, do you have any supplementary question on number 8?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Railton, for your response, where you note that the Council commissioned a review of the Council's water management last year, and then the work is being undertaken this year. I just wondered if you're able to share the last time reviews were undertaken by the Council in relation to water safety management, risk assessment and signage.
So is this a question for, you would like to see the report from the Royal Life Savings, this last Royal Life Savings report? Are you asking to go back in time to find out when the one before that was?
I'm basically Yeah, I would like to know the last time this kind of assessment was undertaken, so prior to 2025. And the reason why I'm asking is obviously because there was a tragedy, and I'm looking at the time frame. If you're unaware, we can follow up.
Yeah, no, I genuinely don't know. So yeah, we can take that one offline.
Thank you.
Councillor Da, do you have any supplementary question on number 9?
Thank you, Councillor Railton, for your response, which makes it sound as though conservation area status applies to houses in a conservation area, but not the pavements and roads. And so my supplementary question is, when there is a plan to put a structure in the road in a conservation area, does the planning authority make a difference between a conservation area and a non-conservation area? And if so, what is the difference in the two processes?
I think I'll probably have to come back on that one, but I think the honest answer is it probably depends. Yeah, but yeah, I think we can get a more detailed answer offline for that one.
Councillor Robinson, do you have any supplementary question on number 10?
No, but I have for 11. Thanks for your detailed reply. It's really useful. You refer to 2 possible sites in Marston and caveat that with the phrase where feasible. Could you email me further details about how you monitor feasibility?
Yes, though I think it is very much it's the county doing the feasibility now, but yeah, we can talk offline about exactly what these sites are and exactly what the criteria are.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, do you have any supplementary question on 12?
Yes. Thank you for your reply. Was there any attempt to understand the reasons why the 7 mentioned verges in your reply saw a significant biodiversity gain, and understand how we could support similar development of this in other cases on other verges?
So this was work that was done, I think, easily a couple of years ago now, and I think, there were originally order sort of 21 of these like biodiversity verges that were cut and collected for a few years. And yeah, there was this work that was underdone a couple of years ago to be like, actually, which ones of these are actually worth it? So in terms of, in terms of assessing why, some of them didn't have the uplift that you would expect. I mean, that's quite difficult. Yeah, you're trying to sort of prove a sort of like negative there. So, I mean, no, I think, the decision was, okay, these ones are worth it, we should keep them. These sort of other, 15 odd are not, we'll stop doing it, draw a line under it, and yeah, maintain the others like that. So I think the answer is no.
Thank you. We now go to Councillor Ashad. Councillor Davis, any supplementary question on number 1?
Yes. Can the Cabinet member provide a monetary figure for the cost incurred by the Council in relation to the event?
Sorry, can you ask me again?
Can the Cabinet member provide a monetary figure for the costs incurred by the Council in relation to this event? This is the Tommy Robertson debate.
I cannot give you an exact figure, but I'm happy to get back to you if that's okay.
Any supplementary question on number 2?
Will the Council in the future continue to spend taxpayer money dealing with the Oxford Union's events?
Yeah, so the leader of the Council has already explained earlier on in the discussions of that we've tried that approach and it doesn't seem to work. So what we are proposing now is that we've written a letter to the Police Crime Commissioner, and we've also our partners as well, so that they pick up the cost.
Any supplementary question on number 3? Councillor Mandi, any supplementary question on number 4?
Yes, thanks to the Cabinet member for the answer, as well as the urging us to support the motion, which I think is on the e-bikes. And all I would say is I would urge the members opposite to support the Green Party amendment on that, which improves the motion greatly and puts in some really important points that we should be considering. So in relation to the follow-up, so all I wanted to say was I have been trying to reach out to the local police sergeant. I just wonder whether the Cabinet member would be happy if I linked her in to help me get a meeting with the local police sergeant about a specific issue in my ward. Thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Councillor Robinson, do you have any supplementary question on number 5? Councillor Mouse, do you have any supplementary question on number 6?
Thank you. So just with respect to the 17 fixed penalty notices issued to businesses for littering, is there a geographical concentration of the locations where these notices were served and any targeted approach that can be taken to work with businesses in that area on their waste management? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. At the moment, I'm not aware of a particular geographical location, but I'm happy to find out further information, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. I propose that we take a break for 30 minutes. We are going to reconvene at 7 p.m. So see you later. Thank you, everyone. We are going to take the public speaker and then come back to the questions. Thank you.
Hello. Far away? Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was appointed the Council's scientific advisor on climate change back in 2020, and since then I've spoken to many of you individually or in groups, and I work very closely with your officers who I must say are hugely committed and effective on climate issues. So I know that the commitment to climate action is widely shared across this council, and even that many of you have campaigned actively on climate action, and some of you have faced down opposition from climate deniers as well. So I'm not going to talk to you in general terms about the importance of climate action this evening. What I'd want to focus on is the council's specific goal for the city to be net zero by 2040. So this goal was a response to the Citizens' Assembly on climate change in 2019, at which it was very clear that Oxford citizens want the city to be a leader on climate action. And actually, in the rest of the country, Oxford is widely seen as a leader on climate action. But net zero by 2040 is a very tough goal. I just want to set out what some of the implications are. In urban areas like ours, the opportunities for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere are really very limited. It's increasingly clear that the prospects for engineered removals are negligible. Of course, tree planting can play a role and should contribute, but given the city's existing boundaries and pressures on land use, its contribution is only ever going to be small. Some people talk about offsetting, but essentially this means paying people in other places to reduce emissions instead of doing it in Oxford. Our emissions are predominantly from buildings and vehicles, and all good practice advice on net zero excludes these sorts of emissions from offsetting. So the science points very clearly to a conclusion that to meet the city's net zero commitment, we have to eliminate the vast majority of fossil fuel use from the city by 2040. It's a huge goal. Fortunately, it is possible, and the declining costs of renewable energy, electric and batteries, electric vehicles, mean that it's increasingly good economics as well. Many measures can contribute: solar roofs, insulation, public transport, better cycling and walking. You know the list, and these measures are in the existing 2040 net zero action plan. But when we're planning to eliminate most fossil fuel emissions, as opposed to just reduce them quite a bit, there are two measures that stand out as essential. First is replacing gas boilers, and second is replacing combustion engine vehicles. In both cases, change is happening, but it needs to go faster, and it will realistically take time to complete. We're now 14 years from 2040. I know 14 years sounds like a long time in politics. It's a lot longer than a week, after all. But both boilers and vehicles have lifetimes of 15 years. So really, we shouldn't be putting in new boilers or bringing in new petrol and diesel vehicles at all from now. So delivery of the 2040 targets implies speeding up action. Fortunately, there's a context in which this can be done, the local area energy plan, not to be confused with the local plan, of course. And workers on this has started, and I've no doubt that you will get an update on that, on progress from your officers in due course. My advice is really to ask two questions of that plan when you see it. And the first is, have we got the policies, the incentives, the regulations that are going to drive the phase out of fossil fuel vehicles and fossil fuel boilers by 2040? Because it's not obvious to me that we have. And second, is there an adequate plan for changing our city's energy infrastructure, for building heat networks, for upgrading electricity networks, for decommissioning gas networks, all of which we're going to need to do to meet that net zero target? So these are clearly questions for Cabinet and Scrutiny, but I want to emphasise this evening that these are changes that will affect every neighbourhood and almost every household in the city, so they are issues for you as ward councillors as well. I suspect that's close to my 5 minutes, so I will leave it there, but I want to emphasise that I'm happy to discuss these issues with any of you in your political groups or other forums at any time. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Nick. I believe Councillor Wrighton is going to respond.
Yes, firstly, thank you very much, Professor Eyre, for coming along this evening to address us on this issue and for your ongoing excellent role as scientific advisor to the Council. So you've mentioned the local area energy plan, which is actually one of 4 plans that have sort of come up in this agenda, all of which are on different geographies. And if you can spot them all, I guess I'd give you like a special prize or something. So yeah, it's a really important piece of work for this council. I guess it's kind of difficult to discuss if we don't actually have it, which is one of its problems. Discussion of it came to most recent climate scrutiny, and similarly, the same body also have had numerous updates, the latest delivering the heat network as well. We've tried to sort of keep this stuff visible to all the sort of political groups who are interested. So certainly, when it comes to EV adoption, we already have some of the highest numbers of EV drivers in the country, but sort of accept that, while I think it's about like 25% of new cars are EV, that's still a pretty long way to go. We wrote an EV infrastructure strategy a few years ago, which sets out the approach to support this transition. When we have over 26,000 EVs in the city requiring charging. We're looking forward to seeing new chargers being installed in the city at the tail end of this year after a sort of number of years of no additional infrastructure going in. Gully is also part of the solution here. This is the sort of cross-pavement charging solution that ODS is going to be putting in alongside for the county council. When it comes to domestic heating, that's probably almost a more difficult problem. I'm glad to see the boiler upgrade grant is still around. There's now a separate grant which covers air-to-air, which I think is a great step forward, actually. I'm sort of like borderline a shill for like aircon at this point, but I think air-to-air needs to be more seriously considered as part of the solution here. Not only do you convert to electric heating, but you also get electric cooling along for the ride as well. Personally, I'm very keen for improvements for how residents interact with the planning system on this. I think it is currently genuinely a little bit too challenging for people. We're expecting people to become massive experts in planning policy and know where to find stuff to, for example, install an air source heat pump or even an EV charger as well. District heat network, I think plans are sort of slowly moving forward. I think it's currently in what can only be described as kind of like procurement hell, which hopefully towards the tail end of this year we will get out of and see some more positive ways forward with it. You talk about decommissioning the gas grid. I think it is fair to say there's currently sort of no real workable plan for this. I mean, certainly in my ward, it's continually frustrating that road after road is dug up for gas leak after gas leak. This infrastructure is genuinely falling apart, and there does need to be a plan for decommissioning it. I think Scotland has some plan, but I think in England there is currently nothing. So the local area energy plan, I'm glad to see the Growth Commission is leaning into, the grid upgrade problem, which the energy plan covers. As you know, this is a real source of friction for putting in new developments. And so, when it comes to the local area energy plan, we will continue to work with the county and its consultants to essentially make this as useful a plan as possible for the city and the wider county. And yes, I think when this thing emerges, we will have a good go around with various committees on it. But no, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you very much.
We now have a second speaker, Dom. Thank you. You have up to 5 minutes.
As a non-binary resident of Oxford, I'm speaking on the impact of the EHRC Code of Practice on Oxford's substantial trans community. The Code of Practice empowers the exclusion of trans people from services and spaces and will make the lives of trans people worse. For a non-binary person like me, this means that I will have no legal access to government-defined single-sex spaces or services. Or, to do so, I am now required by law to identify as my birth sex for accessing a service. Given the extensive changes to my body due to the impact of hormone replacement therapy, this essentially places me with a choice: acting unlawfully to access a female-only space or service, or face discrimination or open hostility by accessing a male-only space where my gender presentation and identity make me a visible outlier. I have, since the introduction of the EHRC draft guidance, already been challenged in bathrooms and changing rooms no less than 6 times, moments that often start with confusion and leave me challenged and harassed when moving through Oxford or simply trying to do my job. On at least one occasion, I was left fearing for my safety after particularly aggressive questioning in a nightclub men's bathroom. Not only does this code undermine my dignity of living out my gender, it also puts me and people like me in danger. I say this to highlight that the impact of the code is not trivial and is particularly serious in Oxford, a city with a substantial trans community that has been threatened by our government. Insidiously and subtly, yes, but threatened nonetheless. As an educator who works in inclusion and access and volunteers with marginalised youth, I add that this harm will not simply be felt by Oxford's adults, but also by young people who are already struggling to interpret a world that chooses to reject them, forcing them, as they come to terms with their gender identity, to also make the difficult choice between dignity and lawfulness, and between self-betrayal and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman is going to respond.
Dom, thank you very, very much for coming to talk to us tonight and for being so open and honest about the issues that many trans people feel about the impact of the EHCR Code of Practice on the community in Oxford. I think hearing your testimony reminds us all of the discrimination and harassment many trans people face in their daily lives. And we know it takes courage to speak up, especially in a public forum like this. So we do appreciate it. Later in the meeting, we will be returning to the subject of trans rights in a motion which I expect will attract widespread and passionate support across this chamber. This council is proud of standing up for and with trans people, that it offers inclusive services to all its citizens, including all groups with protected characteristics as defined by the Equality Act. Speaking personally, I do not want to see the HCR code of practice used by unscrupulous and often prejudiced individuals and organisations to try and water down the rights of the many groups who have so far been protected by the Act. Human rights is not a zero-sum game, advantaging one group at the expense of another. Rather, we should be taking every opportunity to strengthen the framework of rights we have now. The Supreme Court was very clear that its ruling last year does not diminish legal protections against discrimination for transgender people. Oxford City Council is committing to provide safe, accessible and dignified services for all its residents. The Council is working within the 2025 ruling of the Supreme Court and the government's draft code of practice in developing a policy setting out how we will ensure we do not fail to comply with the code of practice, whilst recognising the impact it has on those not identifying as their gender of birth. There will need to be several stages, including establishing a policy position and then reviewing each service and space provision for current compliance against the code, and next steps for each on a case-by-case basis. As the work continues, the Council will consider the impact on and the input of all affected persons with protected characteristics, given that the scope of the changes in the code spans many areas beyond single-sex spaces. I would add that where there is a need, because of the guidance, to implement any changes to specific sites or services, we will ensure there is strong engagement and consultation with all the relevant parties and organisations. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. We can have a third speaker. You have up to 5 minutes.
Stonewall, the leading publicly funded lobby for the LGBTQIA2S+ men and women, has been mute and has not condemned the behaviour of the same-sex couple for the behaviour of the same-sex adopted parents who have been convicted of the death of baby Preston. Given that Oxford City Council has reported to have been paid to attend Stonewall's training and sending Oxford City Council employees to Stonewall's expensive training courses, will Oxford City Council disengage from financially supporting and attending any training organised by Stonewall?
I believe Councillor Chapman is going to respond.
I am indeed, Lord Mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you for your address. I think we all agree that the case of Preston Davey is a tragic and clearly upsetting one. It has been described by the Children's Commission for England, Rachel de Souza, as a massive safeguarding failure. A number of inquiries are underway to learn the lessons of it and help us ensure that all other children, especially the most vulnerable, do not suffer a similar fate. It is the practice of Stonewall, like most charities I know, not to comment on individual cases where they are not directly involved. And we should not, unlike our speaker, draw any inference from that decision. The Council is a member of Stonewall as it provides access to resources and guidance to support and build inclusion and to improve services that we can make them more relevant to the many diverse communities in the city, which is a key ambition of this Council. We do not currently buy into any training Stonewall provides. The Council will continue as a member of Stonewall in line with our commitment to being an inclusive employer. Thank you.
Thank you. We now go back to questions to Cabinet members. We move on to questions for Councillor Chapman. Councillor Davis, do you have any supplementary question? Councillor Mandy, do you have supplementary supplementary question on number 2.
Yes, thank you. If you have it, please, what is the data on the proportion of those using the free collection service that are landlords? Thank you.
I will, Councillor Money, endeavour to get you that information if we have it, but I do not have it at my fingertips today.
Thank you.
Councillor Mandi, do you have any supplementary question for 3? We move on to Councillor Ligo. Councillor Davis, do you have any supplementary question on number 1?
Yes, I was happy to hear the Council is exploring options for additional targeted swimming lessons for children and young people who are the least likely to be able to swim safely. When you say these will be targeted to reach disadvantaged young people, what methods of targeting are currently being explored?
Currently, I had these discussions with officers a couple of weeks ago, so what I'll do until these conversations are finished and we've agreed with it, then I'll get back to you if that's okay, and Council. Thank you.
Councillor Mandi, do you have any supplementary question?
Yeah, afraid so, yeah, sorry, yeah. So, specifically, I was told by a local resident that despite booking the learner pool 4 times between late March and the 20th of April 2026, they were told to use the main pool with their young child. They observed, at least on one occasion, that there was only one lifeguard on duty, which presumably wouldn't have been able to cover all of the pools. If it is, as you've said, Councillor Ligo, that the timetable is being varied for other activities, can this please be ensured that any changes to the timetables for activities are done with as much notice as possible so it's not inconveniencing the swimmers at the pool? Thank you.
Thank you. We were unaware of any changes, but what I would suggest is if you could send me an email, please, of the name of the person who tried to use the Lees pool, and then we'll make sure that we have the relevant officer to reply.
Councillor Powell, do you have a supplementary question on number 3?
Yes, please. So I thank the Cabinet Member for his response, and I'm glad to hear that dignity and respect are being prioritised. However, he must recognise the extreme levels of anxiety that many trans and gender non-conforming people will be currently experiencing. Can I encourage him to offer as much support as possible to More Leisure in developing a comms plan so that their route to proceed on this is very, very clear to the public? Because as we've just heard from our public speaker, there are real concerns here about the various ways in which different parties external to the council will seek this as a justification for their own interjections. So clarity of communication is crucial.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Again, I've had conversations with officers and with More, and again, when we have the adequate response, we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Councillor Powell, any supplementary question?
Not for 4. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, any supplementary question on number 5?
Yes. Thanks for your reply. And I understand that your role is fairly limited, but will you commit to doing everything you can to the residents of Marston to improve their inadequate health services?
Thank you for this. I mean, I guess this is more of a county council question than it is for a city, but as you've asked, I will reply. Councillor Mary Clarkson and I have been pushing for these for many, many years, and what we tend to do is always follow the data. So even if the ICB do have money for buildings, they're probably going to struggle to recruit. And this seems to be the problem. It's the same that we've put in many, many meetings with the pharmacy, as you're well aware as well. And I know working with practice managers at Adena Health and Manor Surgery, it is only a mile away in Headington, and I believe some people in Marston also use the Summertown one as well. It hasn't really been a problem raised to be on the doorstep. It's just a nice to have with a lot of these as well. And I think it was about 10, 11 years ago, there was also a former councillor in the Marston era who said there was no facilities at Marston, and when I named all of them, actually it probably put most of the wards to shame, to be honest, what facilities we do have in the area. Thank you.
We move on to Councillor Rowley. Councillor Mouse, do you have any supplementary question on 1? Councillor Mandi, do you have any supplementary question on number 2?
No more supplementary questions.
Moving on to Councillor Smith. Councillor Fairweather, do you have any supplementary question on number 1?
No, I'd just like to thank the councillor for the very full and informative response.
Councillor Yetman, do you have any supplementary question on number 2?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Jarvis, do you have any supplementary question on number 3?
Very briefly, yes. Thank you for the response. In light of the response and the argument that you'd need at least 9 months worth of opening time to make comparisons, I wondered if you would be able to commit to sharing with members the data usage levels with a comparison of pre-closure levels within 9 months, i.e. at the start of 2027.
Yes, we can share them in 9 months' time.
Councillor Thornley, do you have any supplementary question number 4?
Not on 4, but if I can jump ahead to 6.
Please go on.
Yeah, so the response references Councillor Railton has written to the County Council regarding concerns about the county's parking standards. Would I be able to get a copy of that correspondence?
I'm sure Councillor Railton would be willing to share that with you.
Councillor Stairs, do you have any supplementary question on number 7?
Not on 6, but on 7 I do.
Please go ahead.
Could the portfolio member confirm that there's been no refurbishments to the individual flats within Windale and Northbrook House? And if there are no refurbishments, why is the accommodation standing empty and not being put into immediate use for the homeless? Thank you.
So the accommodation is standing empty because there are still 1 or 2 residents in there, and so we're still working to rehouse them. We made a commitment when we started that, you know, while the residents were working with us and bidding for new properties, we wouldn't be moving in people and using it as temporary accommodation while they were still there. That was a promise that we made to them. And, you know, we hope to be able to rehouse everybody before we start using it as TA, but that does depend on people being willing to work with us to you know, look at a new home. Yeah, so there's no there hasn't been a specific refurbishment budget on those 2 properties. Works have been taking place, but they would have happened anyway. Even if those properties weren't going to be used as TA. So there's sort of health and safety works. You might have seen stuff happening around fire safety doors. So works have been happening on that basis, not as part of like a planned refurbishment ahead of them being used as TA.
Thank you. Councillor Powell, do you have a supplementary?
No, but thank you to the Cabinet member for that response.
Thank you very much. We are moving on, going back to the local plan now, agenda item number 8. I believe Councillor Anna Wrighton is proposing.
Thank you very much. And yes, sorry, you've heard quite a lot from me this evening. So yes, this evening, members are being asked to agree the submission draft of the Oxford Local Plan 2025 such that it can be submitted for examination. You know, just to be clear, the council can only submit a plan if the council consider it to be sound and legally compliant. So just to sort of like run through how we have got to this point and why this is back again. So Reg 18 consultation took place in the summer of 2025. Intention of this stage of public engagement is to gather wide-ranging views to shape the development of the draft plan. So yeah, that was done summer last year. The Reg 19 consultation took place basically immediately after the January full council this year, so around sort of 30th of January to the 13th of March. The intention of this stage is for objectors to comment on whether they think the plan is sound, and these comments are then used to inform the inspector. So the submission version of this plan, the Reg 19 version, is the one that is was one previously approved at Council for publication and submission. This is because the version we submitted, the same version we published at Reg 19, this means we are unable to make changes to the plan following the Reg 19 publication and before submission. I hope that makes sense. So yes, the reason it is back again, though, is following the 26th of January Council decision to publish and then submit the plan. There has been a judicial review against our local plan. Because of this, there is an injunction against our submitting of it. Apparently, this is the first time this has ever happened, just to show that, Oxford is always innovating. So the hearing for this is being heard in October, which is very close to the 31st of December deadline for submitting local plans under the old way of producing them. There is now a new, I forget the name of the, it's not scheme of delegation. There is a new way of constructing local plans, and there is a cut-off date for submitting ones made under the old scheme. So, if we miss this deadline, if we miss this 31st of December deadline, then we will have to start again under the new way of producing local plans, effectively binning over 5 years of work from our officers and leaving us with an out-of-date local plan for essentially, a number of years until this can be produced. So to lay out the risks of not having an in-date local plan. So the existing local plan, the 2036 local plan, is still in place, but it is now over 5 years since it was adopted. It was adopted in June 2020. Under the MPPF, the National Planning framework, this means the standard method will be used to calculate 5-year housing land supply, which we cannot meet, so that means we cannot demonstrate 5-year land supply. This means for decision making, the tilted balance is currently being applied, i.e. in short, we tilt in favour of development. This in turn means that the existing local plan is effectively, it's undermined and will continue to be undermined to a greater extent the longer this goes on, diverting from a plan-led approach, meaning things like, sites can be lost to unanticipated use. You can have, people just bringing forward sites that we then have to accept. And it also removes huge amounts of certainty from the decision-making process and everybody involved in that, including, members of planning committees, as well as members of the public and developers. And yes, so in terms of modifications we can make at this point, following a recent meeting with the Planning Inspectorate, their advice is to not submit the plan with proposed main modifications, as they would rather these were identified during the course of the examination. And it is up to the Planning Inspectorate to decide if there are soundness matters and how to address them. This is essentially, officer guidance to this council. Statements of common ground and a few responses to representations do include some suggestions as a starting point for the inspector. Should they be minded to consider there is a soundness issue that needs addressing, but these are not intended to be listed in this schedule of modifications we are proposing on submission. None of these have a knock-on impact on other policies in any way affecting the overall strategy of the plan. So yes, the inspector will suggest, can and will suggest main modifications if necessary for soundness, and these will be consulted on and may need accompanying updates from the sustainability appraisal. So I think I will, at this point, pass over to Susan to second and I guess, yes, invite any comments from officers that I've missed.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I formally second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. We have had an amendment proposed on the local plan. I will ask the monitoring officer to advise on that.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We have a copy of the amendment which we will circulate to members, so if you can just bear with us for a moment and we will share that with you.
Lord Mayor, I think at this point I wish to make a statement on behalf of myself and indeed you and some other cabinet members. We have today had representations from the claimant's solicitors in relation to the judicial review of the local plan,
which suggests that myself and fellow Cabinet members, Councillor Ed Turner, Linda Smith, Choi Monkonge, Louise Upton and Nigel Chapman should not participate on this item this is the amendment I'm talking about, due to our current or historic role as shareholder of the Council. This is a matter we have previously taken advice from the monitoring officer from, and which, though raised in the pre-action letter, was not included in the judicial review claim. Our position is that we are able to approach this decision with an open mind. However, the progression of the local plan is crucial if we are to retain control of planning in the City of Oxford, as Anna has just outlined, via proper policy. As such, although we do not consider we are predetermined or conflicted, we will withdraw from the meeting on the amendment which is to be proposed.
Thank you. Before you withdraw, I'll propose, obviously, I'm going out as well. Councillor Henwood, I've got something to say.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So this is my original amendment. However, under the monitoring officer's advice, I will be leaving the room, and Councillor Yateman and will be proposing the amendment, and Councillor Haley will be seconding. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. Before you leave the room, I'll propose Councillor Rowley to take over the chair, because obviously I'll be leaving as well. Can I have a seconder? Can we vote on that? From Councillor...
Councillor Rowley to take the chair.
Yes, yes, obviously I'll be withdrawing as well. So I'm asking Councillor Rowley to take over as a chair. So I've anyone to second me first? All right. Councillor Ligo, and then those who are in favour for Councillor Rowley to take over as a chair. That's anonymous. Councillor Rowley.
Hello. Well, I'm back. It's I seem to have been. Hello. Is it a point of order?
I just want to ask whether I need to leave the room declaring an interest, as I'm part of a group that raised concerns about access to the site, or does that not prejudice me?
Monitoring officer, please advise.
Unfortunately, without seeing what the comments are, etc., I can't give you any really definitive steer. What I would say is you need to consider what was said and how much you were represented, and if you think that a reasonable person will consider that you've got a position on the amendment that's about to be considered, i.e. that you have already expressed a view, then I would suggest and advise that you leave the chamber and don't take part. However, without knowing the details, it's very difficult to give any advice, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Emma. And before I bring in the proposer and seconder, I'd like to thank our legal team for the hard work they've done on this at very short notice to make sure that we remain above board. It's certainly not their fault or those of anyone in this room, whatever their view on the local plan or the amendment, that they're working with a legal system like the Vogon spaceships, if anyone is a fan of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is not so much designed as congealed. Having said that, I shall now call upon Councillor Yatesman to propose the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I ask members to support this simple and sensible amendment. Oxford City Council's housing company, Oxford City Housing Limited, purchased the Meadowline site in Iffley Village together with Memorial Field from Donington Hospital Trust for 4.5 million. At the time, the site was expected to deliver 29 new homes. Today, however, the local plan records this site as delivering precisely 0 homes. So I have to ask, if it is expected to provide no housing, why is it still allocated in the local plan? This amendment does not oppose the local plan. We recognise that Oxford needs an up-to-date local plan, and we do not wish to delay its adoption. Instead, this amendment asks the council to write to the planning inspector at the appropriate stage, requesting that this site be removed from the plan because it no longer serves the purpose for which it was allocated. Removing the allocation would also provide certainty for the local community. The Friends of Iffley Village have developed proposals for the Meadow School project, using Oxford's last untouched meadow as an educational resource to help improve school attendance, raise educational attainment, and provide outdoor learning opportunities for young people. Supporting this amendment is therefore a practical, common sense decision. It removes a redundant housing allocation that is expected to deliver no homes while allowing a valuable community project to move forward. It is a win-win solution that does not delay the local plan and benefits both the city and the local community. In relation to Reg 19, the Procedure Guide Provision 1.5 expressly covers this situation, where changes are submitted to the examination that have not been consulted on. I therefore urge members to support this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And do I see a seconder? Councillor Harley, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Before I open debate, I understand the monitoring officer has some words she would like to give us.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. So what you heard in the proposed is that there is a process by which amendments can be submitted with the local plan, and that is not incorrect. However, the view of your professional planning officers on this particular issue is that the removal of the site would undermine the plan and make it not sound, at which point, in their professional opinion, it doesn't meet the requirements of the legislation in terms of being ready to submit. There are a number of reasons, but for example, the removal of a site from any of the sites from the allocations will affect the housing numbers on which the plan is based. I don't know whether planning officers wish to say any more, but I just wanted to ensure that members are aware that this is the position of officers as their professional planning officers in terms of the position of the council on submitting the local plan with this particular amendment or any amendment that seeks to change the site allocation within the local plan.
Thank you, Emma. And I would remind members that although we do not have to follow officers' advice, we do have to make sure that we do have to ensure that it is given significant weight. Very well. Do I see any members wishing to speak on this debate? I can see Councillor Smoten, Councillor Miles, Councillor Muddyman, and Councillor Ortino.
Can I?
Jarvis. Councillor.
Thank you. Stand in, Lord Mayor. Regenerated Lord Mayor. I am minded, I believe, to vote against this amendment, and that is because, having seen the circulated business plan for a meadow school, my view is that both the present and the proposed usage of the site have clear social benefits, and the site policy, as it is proposed, permits both. Whereas, were it to be deleted, as the letter would recommend, then I would expect that to make housing at the site very much less likely. If the site should become available, then I'd wish the proponents of the Meadow School the very best with their endeavours there. And if it shouldn't, then I would encourage them to explore other possible sites. The current proposed site policy for Meadow Lane would allocate it for residential usage. I note that housing in Oxford is both very much needed in general, especially in walkable and cyclable locations. And in particular, the site would be likely to provide social housing, which is particularly beneficial. I wouldn't want to weigh against that potential benefit. I do note that there are many other sites in the city where I would want to see every sinew strained to account for more of our housing need, in particular commercial-led developments such as Oxpens and Osney Mead, where additional government funding could tilt the viability balance and enable us to do more to tackle our housing crisis. However, even if my wildest dreams were to come true in this respect, we are still likely to need all the housing sites in our current local plan, particularly those in walkable and cyclable locations. So I would not be comfortable to start striking sites off the list, or at least to advise the inspector to do so, knowing that every house that was eliminated in that way would be another family that is compelled to live further afield and likely face an onerous, polluting commute as a consequence of that. I also note that the lack of a minimum number of housing units for the site is something of a red herring. If it in practice delivers more units, then more benefit is provided in terms of housing need. If in practice it can accommodate less, then there is less change to the natural landscape and more scope for complementary uses, whether that's a meadow school or anything else. Whichever point we end up on that scale, we end up somewhere on a balance between two things, both of which are beneficial. So to my mind, I don't mind where we end up on that scale. One final note, if the policy is in fact unsound, and I don't think that anybody in this chamber can answer that for an absolute certainty, though people of course have views, then it will remain an option for the inspector to delete it and thereby render the plan as a whole once again sound. For those reasons, I'll have to vote against today. Thank you.
Councillor Miles.
Thank you. So we all know that Oxford needs housing, not just social housing, but affordable housing that is classified as intermediate housing for those who don't qualify for social housing, but for whom the current market is not serving due to the restricted supply in the city. Whether Meadow Lane is built on or not is not going to meet the demand for housing in our city. We know that brownfield sites should be developed as a priority over greenfield sites and biodiversity-rich sites. And this is at a time where the city and I think all of us in the room have acknowledged there is a biodiversity as well as a climate emergency. And we also widely accept that building on areas that are a flood risk is a bad idea. But we also have acknowledged as a group from the Lib Dem side that there are many wasted opportunities where perhaps Labour has, as an administration, not maximised the delivery of housing on sites across the city and instead chose to make Oxford a concentration of labs and offices and push the housing to dormitory towns where people are commuting in. But what we have before us is not a Lib Dem local plan. The amendment and referring to the site allocation is not a Lib Dem site allocation. And maybe the Lib Dems would have taken a different approach to delivering this much needed social and intermediate housing with different site allocations. However, in view of what we've heard today from officers, and the site allocation on the basis of soundness is a technical call for technical experts, and it should be left for the inspection process. For this reason, we believe it's a wrong place and time for the amendment today, and instead this idea should be put forward as evidence by those who've put forward the motion directly to the inspector to hear the evidence there instead. That would be the correct place to challenge any policy matters within the content of the local plan at this late stage. And so for this reason, I think my colleagues will be voting against the motion today. Thank you.
Councillor Muddyman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Obviously, there is a desperate need for housing. We all agree on that, and there's evidence to show that in our waiting lists and actually in many of the questions that were referenced earlier this evening. I'd obviously like to see more housing units on brownfield sites which are well connected to amenities and public transport. There is no evidence to prove that the need for large numbers that there is a need for the large numbers of employment space that are coming, mainly labs and life science buildings, which are planned for many of the brownfield sites in Oxford. So we should be using our brownfield sites for more mixed developments, which have more housing than employment on them. And that would enable us to keep our precious green spaces for residents to enjoy all the health and well-being benefits and protect the local biodiversity. We can have all the housing units we need to meet the requirements of our local plan and keep our precious green spaces if we forgo some of the employment space for which we have no evidence of need. On this site, as the number of dwellings allocated to Mellor Lane is 0, I do not think that it will make the plan unsound or require further consultation. And so I will be voting to support this amendment.
Councillor Ottino.
Yeah, we live in an extremely unequal city, and we all know the reason for that is the cost of housing that makes our city more unequal than pretty much anywhere else in the country. Homelessness is devastating, whether that's sleeping on the streets, sofa surfing, and we all need to think very carefully about what sofa surfing actually means for a young man or young woman trying to find a space to stay every night. Living in overcrowding, which I see every time I go knocking on doors in my ward, or trapped in the really expensive private rented sector. So we've got a local plan. Part of the reason we have a local plan is to identify possible sites where housing could be built, and this is a site that has been put forward. That doesn't mean we don't have a planning application in front of us. There will possibly be a planning application for this and other sites in future, but they will all have to come under the scrutiny of the many planning policies that govern some of the issues raised in this amendment. But we shouldn't be taking this site out, even if it builds one home of social housing. That is a life-changing experience for one vulnerable individual or family in our city. We should trust in our planning officers, the advice they will give around any application, and we should trust in our planning committee, who, when I've witnessed them, I think do a really good job.
Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to the various contributions in the debate, all of which I think have been mostly valuable. In particular, I think wanted to share a lot of the comments that have been made by Councillor Miles in relation to the procedural matter, and it is process that I'm going to focus on rather than the specific site in question, because I think the question we're dealing with today is very different to the question that we were dealing with when we were looking at the individual site allocations as part of the local plan development process. And the question before us today, as I understand it in this amendment, is do we deem the removal of this site from the local plan necessary in order for the local plan to be deemed to be sound by the inspector? And do we deem that if it is submitted, the inspector would would not deem the local plan to have passed the relevant tests and not just be able to remove that site themselves? And from the evidence that's in the amendment before me, and from the advice that we've had from officers and the conversation we've had, I don't see that removing this site specifically from the local plan would make the plan sound, and otherwise it would not be sound, and therefore I'm going to be voting against this amendment on that basis. And just to briefly comment, I think this is the second time that the Independent Oxford Alliance has brought an amendment on this specific site, neither of which went through the process that were agreed between group leaders when we were discussing the development of the local plan. And I think it's worth reiterating again that we might be having a very different conversation about this site had the Independent Oxford Alliance chose to engage properly in the process that was agreed collectively between all group leaders in this chamber.
Councillor Malik.
Thank you, Sitting Lord Mayor, and thanks for jumping into this council chair. I agree with the Councillor Latino. You talk about inequality, etc., but it's thanks to the party who rules us over the last 20, 30 years, gone through many, many local plans. And when you look at the city of Oxford, it's not a rocket science. The people who pass these plans on, especially for Botley Road, look at all those warehouses before the shopping centre, where Councillor Morton says, rightly so, oh, we should build where people can walk and, commute, not commute from outside. Yes, I agree, because that is the failure of this council, whoever was in charge over the year on these local plans, the places like Botley Road and the others. And what we're giving now those brownfield is to all the labs. You had a chance again and again to amend your local plans, where your brownfields are sitting. When they become empty, you do not. Under this administration, again and again, it's been targeted any green space you have. Look at the Bertie Park. Look at the Westland Drives issue. You got your own space sitting the other side of Marston. Earlier, there was a question put by Councillor Robinson saying how the people are getting, these lorries going through the development. The powerful one can get a Barton Park entrance, but that development cannot have an entrance from the other side. This is all kind of thinking which way you think. You are responsible to protect these spaces. You cannot sit on the fence and be hypocrite and one way selling active travel and you want people to live healthy, plant more trees, and then equally, then taxpayer funded side, you go and buy the meadow, right? And to change into development. And during COVID, wasting 150 grand in a broad street, building up an artificial meadow. You couldn't make it up. You spend money to have an artificial meadow. You really want to build on a, real meadow. So if you guys think through and not give in into these powerful laboratories and everything, and 1 minute, we're told about growth these laboratories are going to bring. Tell me how many residents in Barton going to have a job, you sitting in the chair. Rose Hill, Black Police, Cowley or the other. You bring these people from outside. Our children and the school education system, they're not equipped for those jobs. So we're not going to have any fruit of this growth we're talking about. Our youth will be still wandering around the street because they don't have skills. So I will be voting for this. And please, whatever you think, if you believe in the green spaces and everything, you should vote for this.
I think that was a point in debate on the local plan itself, more than on the amendment. But thank you, Councillor Arshad.
Thank you. I'm going to be voting against this amendment. We've heard claims that Oxford's priority is simply to build more labs. I disagree. Our priority has always been to deliver the homes that local people desperately need, alongside supporting a thriving economy. Oxford faces a severe housing crisis. Young people, families, and key workers are being priced out of our city. That's why this council has been working hard to bring forward more homes, including affordable homes and social housing. Every site should be properly tested through the independent examination process, and that is the appropriate place to consider ecology, heritage, and sustainability, not to remove sites before that evidence has even been presented, independently assessed. We are delivering homes and we will continue to deliver homes whilst protecting what makes Oxford special. For those reasons, I will be voting against this amendment.
Councillor Railton.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So I think I would like to make the point that it's very easy to support housing and house building in principle, but where we often differ across this chamber is in the implementation details, and this is very much one such implementation detail. I very much sort of hold a kind of housing theory of everything. The sort of lack of access to decent, affordable housing drives huge amounts of the sort of like inequality and problems we have in this city. Councillor Jarvis is right, though. This amendment before us today is very much a process question. The advice we've been given, and certainly I agree with, is this amendment does effectively block submission of this local plan because we cannot submit an unsound local plan. Oxford needs housing, and Oxford needs a local plan. I think none of us here have really been on a council with no or a seriously out-of-date local plan and had to deal with the consequences of that. We have a really decent record in this city with our planning decisions. Very few of them are overturned at appeal, and I think we're very much held up as a local authority that does this well, and basically we should keep it that way and agree to submit this local plan today. And to do that, we need to reject this amendment.
Are there any further councillors wishing to speak? Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you. This is obviously a really, really difficult decision and goes to the heart of the compromises we have to make. I do hear you and understand about inequality, about homelessness and the unmet housing need. It's absolutely crucial. But this is to do with market forces and an overheated housing market. This particular site needs to be saved. Biodiversity and green spaces are on a cliff edge. These meadows are priceless. These green spaces are so rare that they're our city's lungs, and they're a place for our pollinators and our cooling trees. If we can find spaces for houses in other places, then this is surely a way to save them. I do think that with the amendment, it would be sound and legally holding. I wouldn't want it to undermine the local plan at all, but we won't get these spaces back. So I will be voting for this amendment.
Are there any more members wishing to speak? Seeing none, Councillor Harley, you reserved your right.
Thank you. I think I should have asked Councillor Robinson to be the seconder for this because she's spoken very nicely on this. We all agree that there is a great housing shortage in Oxford, but it shouldn't be housing at any price. We need to protect those precious green spaces because they won't return. Once they've been built on, they're gone. And the local plan shows that this particular site delivers 0 homes. The plan will be sound if it's removed. I am asking you all to support this motion. The modification wouldn't require reconsultation. It won't delay the submission of the plan. It won't affect the overarching strategy of the plan. And it will save the community the time, expense and stress of having to fight the council at examination over a site which is unsound and is of no consequence to the delivery of the strategy of the plan. This motion does no more than writing to the inspector to invite the removal of the allocation of this site from the plan. I urge you to protect the few green spaces that are left in this city and to support this motion. Thank you very much.
Finally, Councillor Yateman to sum up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the representations around the chamber. We have, as elective representatives, the opportunity to shape the development of our city. How many green spaces will we give up? We've heard recently a lot about Bertie Park, Sandy Lane West, playing fields are to be built on. How many more spaces will be sacrificed in the quest for housing? Is this where we want to live? This is a unique site and an unsound site for development. Unsound sites should be removed, otherwise they threaten the soundness of the actual plan. As my colleague has mentioned, this will not delay submission of the plan. It simply requests the inspector to remove it from the plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to the vote, therefore. The amendment proposed is before you, as handed out by officers. Can I please see all those in favour? Hands down, please. Can I see all those against? Hands down, please. And is there anyone abstaining? Thanks. Do we have the numbers?
we're just double checking numbers. We will be 2 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. So we had 9 members voting in favour of the amendment, 32 voting against the amendment, and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. The amendment therefore falls, and despite temptations to remain in the seat, I will vacate it so that the Lord Mayor can return to his place.
Thank you so much, Councillor Rowley. That was the brilliant chairing the meeting on my absence. We now take the questions from members on the actual local plan. So can I have those who would want to ask questions or speak?
The debate on the local plan.
So this is the debate on the local plan. Councillor Miles?
Is anyone else going to speak or just me? Okay. Look, I'd really like to thank officers for their hard work in getting the local plan to this stage and preparing it for submission. Today we're focusing on the process of submitting the draft plan and authorising the Director of Planning and Regulation to make any minor editorial corrections in the sort of supplement that accompanies it. It's about procedural matters, not reopening old debates and wounds as well on policy content. As I said in the earlier motion just discussed, the draft local plan before you is not a Lib Dem local plan. A Lib Dem local plan would have more homes, more social housing, more intermediate housing, houses for teachers and nurses. A Lib Dem local plan would have perhaps higher buildings, sort of gentle density at a higher gradient than we have at the moment, more sustainable buildings, easier processes for climate change mitigation and adaptation, retrofit measures as public benefit in conservation areas, non-heritage buildings, and higher quality architecture in the public realm. It would also be more explicit in its commitment to be a child-friendly city in the planning, in planning terminology. It would have a different balance between transient student housing and mixed housing for local residents, and it would promote more co-housing and self-builds. But there are things in here that are improvements to the existing local plan, and as such greater recognition, for instance, of some of the local centres. I know some of our colleagues sitting next to us have campaigned for. There are various things, I'm sure Labour will talk to the excellent points that they claim that are the benefits of the local plan later. But we do not wish to undermine the work that has gone on in this local plan at a significant cost to the taxpayer, nor do we want to disrupt its submission to the inspector in line with the very tight timelines that have been set out today. So whilst we cannot support the local plan as it stands, we gracefully recognise that there are some good aspects within it, which should feed into any revised local planning processes after the local government reorganisation. And also, we do not want to leave the city in a position where we have no local plan at all. And so, for this reason, we're going to be abstaining today, but not stopping the progress of its submission to the inspector. Thank you.
Any more speakers? Yes, Councillor Turner.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lord Mayor. It's just one comment I wanted to make, because it's something which comes up quite a lot, which is about, I suppose, the balance between employment and housing. And the point I was going to make is that, as I understand it, and I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, employment sites can, according to this plan, be used for housing. The issue is, and again, I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, if the site's already got an employment use, and if we said, this, these days we think we've done enough on employment, we're going to make a landowner change the future use to housing, we wouldn't get anywhere with that. Now, I'd welcome some confirmation of that. And so, the sort of view that, for example, Oseney Mead, we could just say, right, that will be a housing site from now on, that is not going to fly. There's an additional issue, as I understand it, about floodplain there and what you can and can't do in the floodplain, as I understand it. And I also understand it that there may be some mitigations people may try and bring forward some housing. There may well be issues around the viability of certain sites as well. But at core, where you've got an employment land use, as I understand it, you simply can't require that change as a flick of the switch. That's not how the process works. And so quite often when we hear in debates, I don't know what went on while I was out of the room, when we hear in debates, I'd love to support this housing site, but I can't, but then I want housing in lots of other places, and that's going to be the way that I solve my conscience. When I talk to people who are in temporary accommodation, I say, I'd sort of decided to opt out of voting for a social housing site. I found other sites which you can go for instead. Then actually, as I understand it, that doesn't work, and that option is not on the table for us. It's not realistic, and frankly, it's a fig leaf. That's what I understand, Lord Mayor.
Yeah. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I take on board what Councillor Turner has just said, but I understand, I hope I am right, that if we actually own the property, if it's a property at the moment that we own, and it has a use for, shall we say, retail, at the moment we can actually change it and say, right, we'd like to have some... Sorry? I'm sorry, I'm being interrupted, Lord Mayor. Should I stop speaking?
No, just carry on.
Thank you. I understand that we can, in fact, actually use that for housing, and that could be, in fact, social housing. So if we actually own the building, we can actually, under the local plan and national planning rules, actually change its use from an employment site, possibly offices or retail or whatever, to housing as such. And that's one of the things I'd like to see this council considering more. Thank you.
Any more speakers before I take a vote on the local plan? Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you. I reserved my right to speak earlier as seconder. I think I would say that Councillor Turner made a lot of the points I would have made. Just in terms of housing and employment versus employment, as he quite rightly says, every employment site in the city has the ability for the landowner to put housing on it. That was one of the policies we put through in the last local plan. Doesn't mean that the City Council, as a planning authority, can make people put houses on it. And I think this is I'm frankly quite upset at the number of people in this chamber who seem to be perpetuating the myth that that is the case. Because it's a frequently misunderstood thing that I think a lot of residents of our city often say, and it's quite understandable for people who haven't been through planning training, but there shouldn't be anybody in this chamber who has not been through planning training. We do not have the ability to make employers put housing and frankly, nor should we want to lose every employment site in the city. We want employment and housing. And we do make sure that we have the best possible ability to get housing in various different places across the city. We have completely the opposite policies to, for instance, South and Vale, who have got incredibly tight policies on employment on their sites and very little on housing, whereas ours is the reverse. I think also worth noting that some of the other sites that people have been sort of making reference to during the course of the debate around the Botley Road and Oasley Mead, not only is there employment on those sites currently, but the Environment Agency would oppose building of housing on those sites because of the flood risk. So, again, this is not just, the council making policy on its own without reference to proper authorities. This is, listening to those agencies who are going to have a very firm view and would not allow housing on those sites. But the most important thing, I think, today is that we are going through a process because we are being judicially reviewed in an effort to try and stop a local plan being put in place. And I find that really regrettable. I think that it's really important that we have a local plan in the city. I think our local plan is excellent. I think it's got some really good environmental policies in it. I think it's got some really good housing policies in it. And if this local plan fails to get through the process, and I'm sure there might be some changes as a result of the inspectors' hearings, but if it fails to get through the process, as Anna quite rightly said earlier, we will have a very different experience as a local planning authority when making planning decisions, because we will not have any freedom whatsoever to turn down developers, and we will be in a position that many councils across the country have found themselves in without a 5-year land supply, and it's not a great position to be in, and it certainly is not in the interests of local residents. And so I am very happy to support this local plan again, and I hope it and wish it on its way to the inspection process, where these sorts of issues can be debated in full by both people who object to elements of the plan, but also the planning inspector. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'll now put the recommendation of the local plan to the vote. So all those in favour? Apologies, just keep your hands up. Not two hands, please, just one. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, councillors. Those against? Those abstaining? Just bear with us. Thank you. So the recommendation is carried. We are now going to item number 11, Littlemore Neighbourhood Plan. I believe Councillor Wrighton is introducing the report.
I'm not, I'm leaving.
All right. Okay. Yes. All right. I believe Councillor Diggins, you are introducing the report?
No,
No?
I'm sorry. I'm just, for full transparency, the report mentions my place of employment a number of times, but as I'm a history teacher and also have little bearing on any of the decisions, I am going to stay, and I've discussed this with the monitoring officer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That now leaves Councillor Brown to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. This plan's been a very long time in the making, having started pre-COVID. It went through public referendum on the 29th of January this year with overwhelming support. I'd like to thank Jan Pullin and Tony Yude for really driving this one through to its completion over a number of years. I move the report.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Otieno, do you want to speak now or reserve your right to speak later? Thank you. I now call upon any members to speak on this report. No? All right. In that case, I put the recommendation to the vote. So, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you so much. Okay. Just bear with me. We're just calling the councillors to come back in the room. Yes, Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Presuming that we are now moving to motions, I'd like to move a motion without notice that we suspend standing orders, enabling us to carry on till 9:25, allowing the full hour for motions as set out in the Constitution.
Thank you very much. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Jarvis. All those in favour of extending? Those against? That is defeated.
All right, Councillor,
Those
that was defeated. Therefore, the meeting must end at 9 o'clock. It is now 27 minutes past 8, and we will deal with the motions until such point that we need to give the warning for you to conclude the debate and move to a vote. We will take a view, depending on how quickly we get through the first motion, as to whether we start the second motion, depending on how much time is left.
Thank you, Emma. We go to agenda item 18A. I call upon Councillor Turner to introduce the first motion.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lord Mayor. I'll try and be succinct. I'd also note that I have, and I hope it's been circulated, I look to officers, an amendment, here we go. An amendment tabled in my name, which I think tries to meet all three of the other amendments, at least in part. And given that we're short of time, and given I know there's a lot of interest in a second motion, even if I haven't quite persuaded you, you might decide discretion's the better part of valour and to go with my composite amendment, and then we'll get two motions in. So it's been my strong impression from my part of Oxford, but more broadly, that the issue of illegally modified e-bikes, illegal e-bikes, scooters, some of the scooters which aren't authorised, and the mini-motos that are a real source of fear, particularly to some of the most vulnerable road users around. I think we all know people who've had collisions. We know others who've had near misses. And it's particularly frightening for parents who are out with young children on their bikes, particularly frightening for those who are less mobile, those who are out after dark, and so on. We know that where there are off-road cycle lanes, there's a particular worry. And of course, it's the very people who want to be safe, who gravitate towards those lanes, and then they find themselves confronted by vehicles going way too fast, and it's really distressing. Another area I'd point to is the towpath. Again, I've noticed, particularly since COVID times, that space has become ever more congested. It is just not fair, next to water, next to older people going for a walk, next to kids walking along, people pushing prams, to have e-bikes, illegally modified e-bikes, whizzing down the towpath, upsetting people, causing real anxiety. I'd also say, and I reference this in a motion, that it's not fair on those bits of the industry and those retailers who are doing the right thing and are selling the kit which is in compliance with the rules. We also know as well about some of the dangers of charging the illegally modified devices. And then lastly, and you'd expect to hear this from a Labour person, I think there's an issue around the exploitation of workers. I think that was the sentiment of one of the amendments as well. I'm a trade unionist, and it's my view that workers should not be exploited by big tech platforms who may encourage and incentivise those workers to rely on illegally modified e-bikes to make money for their hedge fund owners. That's why I want to put the motion. That's why I think we need to make a stand. It's my strong impression, actually, that quite a lot of MPs, including at least one of the city MPs, have been pushing on this because the feeling is government is aware of the issue but isn't going far enough, fast enough, and more needs to be done. It's my impression as well that our communities really expect us to be stepping up on this. And some of it, frankly, does need to be about enforcement. And again, if there's a difference between the proposers of the Third Amendment and myself, it is that actually some of this is, I'm afraid, if people are breaking the law and they know they're breaking the law, then they should be held to account for that. And it's just not right. It's a crime to be riding around on these things on public roads, and it needs to be dealt with. And individuals need to be held to account for their actions. So on the self-amendment, let me just explain on the Independent Oxford Alliance one. I think it would have been implicit anyway in our kind of letter to the Secretary of State. She should consider legislation, but really happy to make that clear. So I've taken on board that wording. I gave some examples of places where it's dangerous to be using an illegally modified e-bike. The IOA then added some other places in as well. I thought rather than trying to be exhausted, I mean, clearly you shouldn't be riding one around on a kid's playground. That wasn't in my original list. So I thought rather than giving examples, let's just be generic.
Councillor
If it's illegal,
Turner,
you shouldn't do it.
to wrap up.
Yeah, great. So I was listening for that bell and it never came. Briefly, the Lib Dem one decision on e-scooters is overdue, but I didn't want to go on a completely different territory endorsing a particular outcome there. Instead, we're saying force the pace on a decision because that's overdue. So that's to be helpful. Then with the Green one, I said that I think we want to focus on public safety and platforms. You might involve other agencies as well. So I hope that does the job, Lord Mayor.
Time is over. I believe Councillor Wrighton is seconding.
Yeah, I reserve my right. I'll do it later.
Thank you very much. Yes. No, not on amended one. So we take the amendment first. Yes. I believe Councillor Henwood is putting the amendment. Are you withdrawing or going ahead with your amendment?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
All right, that's your time now.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So the devil is in the detail. So we were very happy to see the original motion identify specific areas within the city that should be enforced. What we want to do is make sure and include council-run parks, sports fields and playing grounds and recreation grounds. We would like to see these included and enforcement also encouraged as well. So we're grateful for Councillor Turner including our proviso to write to the Secretary of State to review whether existing legislation provides sufficient powers to prevent the manufacture, import, sale or advertising of products intended to unlawfully modify electrically assisted pedal cycles. It's not just illegal cycles, it is electric bikes that can be modified as well. And bring forward further legislation if necessary. So it's a detail about the City Council or council-run parks, we standing up to that responsibility and enforcing actions within our own environments. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Haley, do you want to speak now or reserve your rights?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. I now open for members to debate. I can see Councillor Otieno.
Asking because I don't actually see where there is a copy of this amendment. Can we have copies of this amendment? I don't see it on ModGov.
See the amendment, I think is what he said.
Okay. Well, they're secreting the amendments. I call upon Councillor Clarkson to speak. I did see your hand up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I have to say that complaints about illegally modified e-bikes form one of the biggest source of complaints in Marston, because we've got the very well-loved and very well-used Marston cycle path from the city centre. One of my main concerns is that these illegal bikes actually work against active travel, which we're supposed to be supporting. The people who complain about them are push bike users and pedestrians and dog walkers. So we need
Sorry, Councillor Clarkson, can I just check you are speaking on the amendments?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, okay, sorry. Take that back. I'll have another go later.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
I need speakers for the amendments. Councillor Smorton and Councillor Mouse.
I think this is harmless if duplicative. I suggest that we vote in favour of it, because as far as I can see, it does almost nothing semantically and renders the motion largely the same. I suggest we move on.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I agree that we should move to a vote quickly on this, but I would actually like to oppose it. I think it causes problems to the motion, because it muddles up areas which are genuinely publicly controlled, where the law would apply, and areas which are not, like our parks, where it would be very, very difficult to enforce the legislation. So I think it actually undermines the motion. And I think it's much better to leave it open and say, you know, we would wish to enforce wherever we can, which is what effectively the motion says as amended.
Councillor Hill, you reserved your right to speak. This is your time.
I'll be very brief. I just think that just because it's difficult to enforce something doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. So I would suggest that you support our amendments and then you can move on to the next item. So please support these amendments to improve the wording and the clarity of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you all. Just to clarify, we are now voting on the amendments. Those who are in favour of the amendment. The IOA amendment. Those against? Thank you. Those abstaining? Thank you all. So the amendment has failed. We move on to the Lib Dem amendment. I believe Councillor Smorton is introducing his amendment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I decline to move.
Sorry?
I said, thank you, Lord Mayor. I decline to move the motion.
Oh, all right. All right. Okay. Is that the other way of saying you have withdrawn your amendment? All right. Okay. We go to the green amendment. Yeah. This one. To the green amendment. Yeah. Thank you. We now go to the green amendment. So we have got Councillor Davis introducing the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Just quickly, so whilst we agree with aspects of the original motion and that these illegal e-bikes are a significant concern to public health and safety, we're concerned over lack of thought put towards the exploitative nature of the meal delivery apps, which are by far the large cause of these bikes in our city, with up to 70% of urban e-bike users estimated to be food app delivery drivers. The gig economy model of these apps forces many delivery drivers into situations where they feel these bikes are required, and although I welcome recognition of how central worker exploitation is to this issue, I'm concerned that the original text still does not do more than seek to simply criminalise the symptom and not address the root cause. Is not a problem that can be policed out of existence. Crucially, however, and what the Labour amendment does not care to address, is the issue of immigration enforcement. As many of us in the Chamber will be aware, in the recent months there have been major concerns regarding police collaboration with immigration services during e-bike stops. Police have been accused of stopping delivery riders under the guise of e-bike checks with immigration enforcement and then attempting to check the immigration status of those stopped. This enforcement therefore creates a very real, explicit and targeted danger for those with precarious immigration status. It will go against our declaration as a city of sanctuary to tacitly endorse these stops, which have further criminalised and terrorised black, brown and immigrant delivery workers and residents. Hence, we submitted the following amendment in an attempt to get to the heart of the motion and ensure we stay true to our values of sanctuary and justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? You can speak now or reserve your rights.
I will speak now in the hope that we might make quick progress, but I understand members may have different views. So thank you, Lord Mayor. I should say unlawfully modified e-bikes are perhaps the thing I get the single most emails about, so I appreciate the thrust of the motion. In simple terms, I feel unable to vote for a motion that doesn't condemn the collaboration with immigration enforcement from Thames Valley Police. This is activity that disrupts our communities, and we should hold ourselves as a council to a higher standard. So, in simple terms, if we pass the amendment and take out or recognise the problematic collaboration with immigration enforcement, I'd be delighted to vote for this. If we don't do that, I can't bring myself to vote for it, and I recognise that there may be many other people in the chamber who feel similarly. So that is what the amendment is seeking to do. Given where we are with time, I will leave it there.
Thank you. I now ask members to speak on Green's amendment. I can see Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Fine. I mean, this surfaces a difference of opinion. Maybe 3 quick points. I mean, one is on the kind of root causes bit and the enforcement. Totally hear what the councillors are saying, but there still has to be a place for enforcement if people are acting in a way which is outrageous and illegal. I'm afraid that means the things need to be got off the road, they need to be confiscated, and they need to be crushed. And that we should, for all, by all means, should address some of the root causes, and they're carefully referenced in a motion, but there needs to be enforcement as well. That's the first point. The second point is this council has a long and proud record of saying that when it comes to migration enforcement, we would not, for example, welcome or cooperate with it in respect of HMO licensing, right? And I want to put that out there because that's very important, that in circumstances where a tenant is concerned for their safety, but they think there may be unpleasant consequences for them or family members or something like that, they're much less likely to complain, so we're really clear that has no place. To me, there is a difficult issue here because some of the enforcement activity may be, for example, from the new Fair Work Agency, and it's precisely by doing this sort of thing that we can hold the platforms to account. And if the platforms are relying on exploiting people and putting them in a position where they shouldn't be working, and then it's the platforms that are really making the money, let's be clear about that, not the vulnerable people, then there could be a place for some of the enforcement. What our motion says, though, now is the public safety should be front and centre. But if we're just serious about holding some of these ghastly gig economy models to account, then there should be another aspect to it as well. So those are the 3 points I wanted to make. I respect there's a difference of opinion. I'm not sure we're that far apart.
Thank you. Councillor Miles, did I see your hands up?
Yes,
Okay.
I think we're bringing multiple issues, too many issues, dealing with them all in this one motion when this is around sort of the illegal modification of e-bikes. You know, we're focusing on the cooperation of Thames Valley Police with immigration enforcement. I think that's a separate discussion. And a fairer society is one where rules are enforced, and it's appropriate that different enforcement agencies do work together at times and on complex challenges. And as I say, I think the police's job is to enforce the law, and so it's right that they're working on that, and they may and may not work in parallel with other enforcement agencies. So I think bring back another motion to deal with some of the issues you've raised, but let's not deal with them in the e-bike modification one, and therefore for this reason we'll be abstaining on the amendment today.
Thank you. Councillor Dow.
This amendment does not seek to say that there is no place for enforcement of illegal e-bikes. It just seeks to look at both the context and also to look at the fact that if you're booked for one crime, that should not mean that your status in this country is suspect. When the police were stopping illegal e-bikes on Cowley Road, they were doing the right thing. When they were asking to see evidence of people's right to be here and right to work, that should have been nothing to do with it. We should not be asked, just on the basis of what we're doing, whether we have the right to be in this country. That is oppressive. It's a tactic used by oppressive countries, and we do not want to be like that.
Councillor Wrighton.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So, yeah, there are like real sort of lowercase l labour issues here. It is widely known for many years that delivery app accounts are often rented out to people who have no legal right to work in the UK. If you did have legal right to work in the UK, you could have one of these accounts. So what we have here is a bunch of tech companies throwing VC funding at enabling people to work illegally for less than minimum wage, you know, almost certainly. You know, they're not making that much money to start off with from these apps without even before paying rent to those basically intensely unscrupulous people who own the account, while simultaneously making our streets more dangerous. I'm not sure we want to be picking and choosing what laws to enforce here. The illegal vehicles are illegal for a reason, as are rules about right to work in the UK, because, you know, what you end up with, if you ignore those, is literally what we have here. We have a bunch of exploited workers acting dangerously, you know, with, yeah, you know, no regard for public safety or the fact that these people genuinely are being exploited. So, yes, I will be voting against the amendment for that reason.
Councillor Malik.
Thank you. I'll take you back a few years now. We used to have a licensing officer called Bill Scott when he was doing taxi, and just what Councillor Dahl just said, he came out with the police, with the immigration officer and a taxman. And they used to do a randomly check. And in my point of view, that time it was rightly so, because A, if you are earning, you must be paying your tax, contribute to the tax system, if you are legally working. So we never raise the eyebrow and saying this is racist or this is something else going on, they're taking us. This is how the law works nowadays. And if you ask me now, well, City Council does very good on the licensing because we as a taxi driver have to provide a tax code. So make sure you paying the taxes, you're on the system. So I don't think so this has to do with the immigration or the targeting particular hardworking people, etc. Is the industry the basically culprit here who putting pressure on those people to have those motorbikes modified and go faster, those e-bikes or whatever you want to call them, because they want to earn more money. They've probably been earn less. So they are big companies. I don't want to name them, but everybody knows their logos and everything. So I don't think so it is to do with anything with the immigration. It is about the law. On the other side, what I see when I drive around, I see a great work by the Thames Valley Police. It's obviously subject to when they have the people on the weekend, if you see, they're not just only stop the e-bikes, they're also stopping the moped guys as well, who are speeding, rushing around, weaving in and out. So I think they're doing their job, but it's still more for them to do.
Thank you. Can I just remind the councillors to just be a little bit quickly when talking, because we're obviously running out to debate on the main motion. Councillor Otieno.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is conflating two issues, and I'm slightly worried that somebody reading this might be thinking that we're suggesting that the only people riding illegal bikes are people that are migrants. So I don't want us to be doing that. We want the police to enforce on illegal use of these bikes and scooters. And if we hear that the police are only targeting people of certain skin colour, then that's another motion that needs to come forward to this council, and we can object to that. But I don't think we should conflate the two of them.
Thanks for that brief. Councillor Thornley.
Yeah, I had a point on the enforcement. I feel like it's important to remember we're talking about extrajudicial police powers to just go and seize something and crush it. It didn't take me a lot of Googling to find cases where they've taken legal e-bikes. They took one, West Midlands Police recently confiscated one that was hired out by Birmingham City Council and crushed it. This doesn't go to a judge or a magistrate, the police just do it. So I just wanted to make that point when we're talking about enforcement, to distinguish between the legal process and when we're just asking the police to go and, just take their powers and maximally use them.
Thank you for that brief. Councillor Henwood.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So I am struggling with the immigration aspect of the Green motion. I was actually praying today that the Greens would come up with a question of provenance. Where did the lithium come from? Where does the cobalt come from? Are these products ethically mined? Can we use that as a mechanism to curb some of the illegal use of these e-bikes coming into the country? I will be abstaining on the Green motion, but I will be voting for the Labour motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Job, you have to be really quick.
I'll be really quick. I wholeheartedly endorse the points made by Councillor Railton and Councillor Turner, particularly with regard to the forthcoming Fair Work Agency's remit in ensuring that right to work checks are carried out. It's an open secret that the companies in question rely on illegal immigrant labour and heavily rely on the illegal e-bikes that we see whizzing around the city all day. I'd also like to make the point that there is nothing inherently immoral about immigration enforcement. It is part and parcel of living in a civilised society. If we are not enforcing the law consistently, we cannot have a hope in hell to achieve anything. I'm particularly disappointed by the fact that the Green Amendment couches or describes immigration enforcement in terms of being harmful to the community, harmful to cohesion, harmful to public trust. What's harmful to public trust is the notion that if you commit an offence, the offence of being in this country without leave to remain, if you work without permission in this country, you do not have, that isn't enforced. You don't get the appropriate sanction. I think that is exactly the sort of reasoning that is leading to division in our country and has caused the far right to become emboldened and to make ridiculous claims about two-tier policing. So please, let's stop this ridiculous student politics and just say that we need to enforce the laws that we have. Thank you.
Now the last speaker, Councillor Stairs. Yep.
I absolutely agree with Councillor Judd, and we need to put things into proportion. If you're stopped by a police officer, you're likely, whoever you are, to be asked for your identification, for your driving licence. It's the same across the board, as should the law be. Thank you.
Thank you, all speakers. We now have to vote on the Green Amendment. All right. Oh, yeah. Councillor Powell, Councillor Davis, sorry.
Yeah,
to
I just
sum
wanted to clarify a few things. So the reason this is relevant is because we're being asked to endorse and celebrate these stops, which is including immigration enforcement, and so that is why it's relevant to this motion and why it's relevant to this topic. I completely agree, industry is the culprit, but I do not think we address this problem by terrorising people who are expected to get by on very little if they are asylum seekers. Of course, I'm not saying that all e-bike users are asylum seekers, and that was not at all suggested in the motion, but I think that you need to address the system and not terrorise the individual, people who are expected to live sometimes on as little as £7 a day. These people are exploited, absolutely, but they should be given the right to work, and the answer is not to criminalise the individual and make them fear for their well-being, their families and their livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the amendment into the vote. So those who are in favour? Those against? Thank you. Those abstaining? So the amendment has fallen.
Really nice time for any speakers.
Thank you very much. We don't have time for any speakers on the substantive motion, but we call Anna to Councillor Wrighton to speak, because obviously she did reserve her right to speak.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I will keep it very brief. So I've maintained for a few years now that this is probably the one transport issue in the city where there's more or less unanimous agreement, actually. And I think most residents in this city can tell you a story about a near miss with one of these riders. You know, I'm not sure anybody in this city signed up to have, essentially, a bunch of young men, it is almost exclusively young men, piling up on Carfax and elsewhere in the city centre, some of them wearing balaclavas, in July, in Oxford, that and their behaviour when riding does make a lot of residents in this city feel pretty unsafe. And nobody asked any of us if that's ever what we wanted, right? I mean, it's also not yet mentioned that these IFI units also cause fires and almost certainly caused a house fire in Littlemore recently, and that undermines wider, legal e-bike adoption, which is a real net positive for lots of people. So yes, I really strongly support greater and more wider reaching enforcement here. We need to get these bikes off the street and crushed.
Councillor Turner to sum up.
It's all been said, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion into the vote. So all those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? Thank you. The motion is passed. All right. Thank you so much. My first meeting is closed. Thank you.